Welcome to the future of video games in podcast form. I'm Jeff Gerstmann. Welcome to the program. It's time to talk about what's been going on over the past week or the week ahead or a bit of both. No matter what happens, I am ready for I'm ready to enjoy many years of fine video games because I finally ordered my PlayStation 5 disc drive. I'm ready to strap this onto my PlayStation 5 Pro and put discs in it for years to come. I'm very add a Blu-ray disc drive to your PS5 digital edition console. Play PS5 games and supported PS4, and I can also watch amazing entertainment. So that's I love to watch amazing entertainment, and so I'm stoked to be able to put a disc drive onto my PlayStation for gaming. They're still selling those. I don't know why they I don't know, they wouldn't stop, but there's been some news. I guess the consoles that you find out in the streets when you're out there buying a console that comes with a disc drive, they have put stickers on them in some regions. I imagine it's a stock thing. Like as they ship more consoles out, they will, put more of these stickers on them. But the stickers say like, hey man, after January 20, we're not making discs. We're eventually going to stop making the things that go in these. So just know that. Just know that if you're going to buy any one of these, that you're gonna have to you're gonna have to contend with that, and I guess that's the right thing to do. Give people plenty of warning, because obviously I think I would have to guess that the majority of people who are out there in the world have no idea that any of this stuff is coming, that none of this like digital only whatever is about to happen. So probably good of them, probably smart of them, like legally speaking, also to make that change. So hey, a smart move on their part, I guess, in the context of this insane thing they're doing. That is maybe not that insane, but that doesn't mean it's fun or cool. Decidedly uncool. Strauss Zelnick from 2K gave some a little bit of, I don't know, because they're about to ship Grand Theft Auto with no disc, and he was just like, yeah, I don't know, man, like a disc. The quote that went around was like, discs don't make sense for a lot of consumers, which I think if you're in the position to be shipping Grand Theft Auto and it's theoretically going to have an online component, you probably could try to make some case like, well, hey, look, this is a game you're going to be playing once a week for the next 10 years. Do you want to go get a disc every time that you want to do that? Of course you don't. So this is a convenience for you. I mean, the whole point of it is convenient, right? He also had a lot of things to say about streaming in this. It's a IGN interview, I believe. Kind of saying like, oh, with if devices that can't play games could suddenly play games, that's 10 times the potential players. I don't know. Like, I think people are getting a little like sky is falling about that stuff. And I get it. But I just ultimately, I think that the types, and this is the thing I've said all along, the types of games we enjoy en masse would have to change dramatically in order to be palatable when running over a live stream as opposed to running on local hardware. I think even people who are not super latency sensitive, which I think is a lot of people, they're just like, I don't know, they just pick up the controller and go, and if it doesn't feel right, they don't, it takes a lot for them to go like, hey, there's something wrong here, as opposed to just like, I guess that's just what the way the game is. I don't know, whatever. I think that the way games would be made would have to change. GTA 6, like think about Grand Theft Auto games as an example here. You get driving pretty fast in those games, right? You want to not crash into other cars. You want to line up headshots on other enemies. Like there's precision involved in a GTA game. And that precision becomes a little bit harder to navigate. With current technology, to give them benefit of the doubt, I guess, even though I don't think they deserve it. It becomes a lot easier to overshoot your headshots. Like if you're aiming for a head, you held the stick for a little bit too long and it goes too far. You try to push to autocorrect, but there's a few frames of latency involved, and so it takes a little bit for it to go up. And all of that becomes perceptible over time to the point where you're just like, I fucking hate this. And it makes your games feel mushy and imprecise, which I think in games that do, even if they only occasionally deal in precision, I think that that's the sort of thing that adds up over time, and you lose a lot of players along the way. Imagine if every fighting, and then once you get to other genres of game, you end up in situations where you're just like, imagine if every fighting game had even more latency stacked on top of it, because it also had to, the video signal had to travel to you before you could, input more commands or whatever. From a tech perspective, they try to say things like, well, that's true, but if both players are running in the same server rack, then the latency between those two servers is, extremely fast, and that makes up for it. And so I think, ultimately there's like technology that can improve, and streaming can certainly get better, but at the same time, it doesn't often feel like there's a lot of reason for it to get better. And, the way consumers and players are being treated is just like cattle. There's a certain amount of just like, these people don't give a shit. And I get it, because I think that by and large, in a mainstream sense, a lot of these people don't give a shit. But you do end up in some conversations like, okay, so let me get this straight. You're going to sell Grand Theft Auto to people, or any game, you're going to sell a streaming subscription service to people that requires you to have pretty fast broadband internet with, with maybe not a data cap on it. And also they need to have a certain, a certain amount of internet. They're going to subscribe to a gaming service, even though they don't own a game, a game console in some of these cases. But they care about this stuff enough to jump through those hoops, but not the hoops to just buy a thing and play it. And cost is going to be a factor, and all of that. But I think like long term, the idea that a significant percentage of the user base is going to be willing to sign up for a subscription service and just stream stuff, and like, hey, their games are just going to feel worse. I don't know that that's, unless there is literally zero alternative, right? If everything goes in that direction, much like with the disc thing, like presumably Xbox will go in the same direction because it makes business sense for everyone involved, and so on and so forth. If there is literally no alternative, right? If they're just like, hey, if you want to play these games, this is how these games exist, and that's it, then I think that people put to that decision, then maybe you will end up getting, that to succeed financially up to a point. But I do think that I don't think that brings a lot of new players in the door, or at least not enough. Like it brings a lot of casual players that churn in and out. It's a lot of people signing up for a subscription the month that GTA comes out and canceling it, and like a lot of in and out fuckery. And I think that it kind of makes the experience less palatable to your core audience to a degree that I think that eventually impacts that as well, And so there's a certain amount of like, okay, we're going to chase after this bigger audience, but you're going to lose your core as a part of that process, and the audience that you're chasing is going to be extremely fucking fickle. And ultimately, I just that doesn't seem like great business to me. I think that, a lot of the people that are talking about like, oh, well, streaming is going to be this amazing thing. They're thinking like they're going to make it up in volume, like the change bank, and that it'll all work out in their favor. I will say that I think that anything is possible. And I think that the technology can improve from where it is. Again, you know, the people like to say that the speed of light is the speed of light no matter what, right? And so there's only so much better that some of that stuff can get, but obviously compression technology can improve, and you know, there's certain aspects of the delivery mechanism that can get better. But then you're reliant on broadband internet across the country, across the world, which is a fucking super shaky proposition on top of everything else. It almost is sometimes it feels like they're like, well, you know, hey, when all this AI shit implodes, we're going to have all these fucking data centers. We need to do something with them. Why not turn them into fucking game streaming? They can pollute the environment with that instead. But yeah, I think that's those are kind of the key takeaways from the Strauss-Zelnick stuff. You know, he's been making the rounds, right? Which I guess makes sense, right? He runs the company that is about to drop the most anticipated video game in the last 5 years or something, you know? So I guess it makes sense that he's out there. I guess it makes sense that he is in the WWE game as a downloadable character. They're like, man, we need people to know who Strauss-Zelnick is. I don't know why, but they did feel a need to get out there. But this is, you know, kind of on the you know, everyone's doing their quarterly reporting and all that stuff too. So of course there's a little bit of that. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about this Marvel fighting game. I'll take you. I will take you for a ride. Hey, let me tell you about Quince. Quince is all about fewer, better pieces. Their clothes are made with premium materials. They're built to last and designed to become the ones you reach for day after day. Quince specializes in everyday staples that work harder, you know, like ultra soft organic cotton tees, premium Mongolian cashmere sweaters, all sorts of stuff. They're versatile, timeless, and transition seamlessly from a casual workday to dinner out, you know. If you're still hanging on to the same worn out basics, Quince makes it easy to upgrade. They've got premium denim, tailored chinos from just $60 with that kind of perfect fit, structure, and high quality fabrics that you would expect from a luxury designer brand. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for high quality, not brand markup. Those cashmere sweaters been getting a lot of praise around the family, you know, over the last year or so. But they've got a wide variety of stuff. I mean, you know, like they're known for the clothing and having like all sorts of stuff on that front, but they've got bedding. They've got jewelry. You looking for some Cuban links? You looking for a chain? Oh, yeah. They've got chains. It's not just clothing. Quince has become the go-to for everything from hotel-quality bedding and bath essentials to premium cookware and travel must-haves. They've got it all. Head over there right now. I've got a bunch of Quince stuff. It's been great. Upgrade your everyday. Download the Quince app for app-exclusive offers or go to quince.com/JeffG. Get free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada and the UK, too. That's QUINCE.com/JeffG. Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, which is like they called a game Marvel Fighting Spirit, Fighting Souls, I think is how that works. Tokon Retsuden is a PlayStation-era wrestling game from Yuke's, originally released as a New Japan Pro Wrestling licensed game. But Tokon Retsuden came over here originally as Power Move Pro Wrestling. Activision put it out over here on the PS1. It's not a good game. It never was. Kind of starts the run of Yuke's as being a company that is known for not making great wrestling games. Anyway, Marvel Tokon, I guess, you know, a little bit of a U in there. Is Arc Systems' new Marvel fighting game. It finally shipped. If you may remember, they ran a beta a couple of weeks ago, and the PC version of it barely worked, which left people thinking, man, what in the hell is going on with the PC version of this game? And then it launched, and they started selling it, And despite having a Steam update that said, hey, we fixed a bunch of stuff after the beta and before the game's launch, they put it out and it was still fucked on the performance side. The first couple of times I launched it just launched to a black screen. Like, the PC version of it was messy. Also a lot of stutter and problems, seemingly problems with network connections. I saw some players complaining originally that PlayStation players did not want to play with them. And so crossplay was getting turned off, or they were rejecting matches, or whatever the hell it was. There was an update yesterday that sounds like it's corrected a lot of those issues. The PC version of the game, other than the black screen stuff, once I kind of got it up and running, even before that patch, the game was running okay. But now after that patch, like, online matches are running properly, and a lot of that stuff has been seemingly fixed. We'll see if they actually nailed it this time or not. But mostly I've been playing it on PlayStation. It's an interesting game. I played it the first beta when they put it out a while ago, and was not impressed with it one bit. It's a tag game with you eventually have up to 4 characters in your crew that you can tag between and do kind of a lot of the same types of moves that you would expect to be in a tag fighter. There's assist attacks and kind of mid combo that you can pull this guy out and do this, and little kind of bits and pieces that you would expect. The one thing they're doing that you might not expect for a tag fighter is that you kind of have 1 health bar. And the interesting thing about that is, like, and they've said this in their interviews, and I think that it is an interesting way to kind of bridge the gap, even if, like, it doesn't make a lot of, like, logical sense for 4 characters to share a life bar, but who cares? Worked for what? Tekken Tag, right? Is it lets you just focus on 1 character if you want to. And that's my biggest problem with a lot of tag games. And it was the thing I was staring down the barrel of on this, was this notion of, like, dude, am I gonna have to learn 4 fucking characters? I do not want to do that. I don't care enough about any of these characters to learn a full crew. 2 things about that. Some good, some bad. First is that, you don't really have to tag out if you don't want to. There are reasons to do so here and there. But the other one is, like, all the characters have the same fucking moves. Not all of them. But if you are looking for dudes what do dragon punches, let me tell you, Marvel Tokon might be the fucking game for you. Because Wolverine effectively does one. Obviously, Captain America does one. Iron Man does it with a knee. But everyone has, like roughly the same inputs. It's a lot of and they even have a button you can push, so it's like forward and R2, down and R2. You can kind of do all your specials that way if you want. But if you're inputting the moves the normal way, it's like fireball forward, fireball back, a dragon punch, and then, like, down, and a button. And it's a lot of that. I have not played the entire roster, but every character that I've gravitated towards so far, which is, like, Captain America, Wolverine, Iron Man, Spider-Man, like, they all have moves that kind of fit that basic template. And that's a little the properties are different, right? I mean, like there are unique things about each character. It's not like every single one of them is like, well, it starts up like this, it has this many frames of this and recovery this, like there's still a balance involved in that. But in terms of just, like, jumping from character to character, there are enough characters that have similarities there that in the process of figuring out, like, who do you want to play, you can kind of fake it from one to the next. And that's kind of cool. There are other characters that have, like, alternate meters and other things going on, and are obviously more complicated than that. But they do a good job, at least, of giving you, like, here's some basic bread and butter ass shit, man. If you just want to do fighting game shit, if you just want to get in there and hit buttons, like, there are a lot of characters that have fucking attacks and specials that you will recognize from every other fighting game that has ever existed in the history of the universe. And I think that that's smart. I have not delved into the weirder characters yet. too much. So I've just been kind of fucking around in training and just playing some online matches just to get a sense of how all of that stuff works. But it's a lot of, there's a layer of mechanics in this game that I have already forgotten, and it's typical for an ArcSys game and typical for a tag game, especially because it's a lot of like, okay, well, if I can do this, can I chain multiple supers together? And like, yes, you can. I have completely fucking forgotten how to do it already, but you absolutely can do it. There's different types of blocks and defensive conditions, crossovers and what have you, that can be advantageous to do it at the exact right time. And I have forgotten all of that. What I have not forgotten is that every one of your buttons in this, you can mash it until it does something cool. If you've played, was it Persona 4 Arena, Ultimax, or otherwise, that is, it does a similar thing. A lot of the ArcSys games are doing it. Dragon Ball, I think, does it to a certain extent as well, where you can just mash a button into an auto combo that eventually chains into a super if you have enough meter to do so. It might not always be advantageous for you to do that. It might not always be the best way to spend your meter to just mash into a combo and do it. But it is effective. And again, you have 3 attack buttons, and if you're in the right situation meter-wise, all 3 of them will eventually chain into some kind of super or ultimate or big group attack. And so at low-level play, which is what I would consider where I'm at right now, you have to go through 10 training matches or 10 online matches before it will even let you play ranked. And I'm not quite through that yet. Positioning and spacing and knowing when to push your buttons and when to not push your buttons has been the only difference maker I have needed thus far. It's very much, for me, it's been a game about jumping in, but just jumping up and immediately air dashing and landing to kind of mix up some of the timing on people and landing right in combo range and doing some stuff. And it really is a lot of stuff chains into a lot of other stuff with those auto combos. And so there is an element of it that just, if you are proper about when you start pushing your buttons and when you are blocking, you can do real good. The first match I got, the guy fucking rage quit. I don't know. He just didn't like the way I was pushing my buttons. I was pushing my buttons too well for him. And that was that. At least it still counted as one of my 10 matches, even though he quit. It's neat. I don't think it's like an amazing game so far anyway, but like I am enjoying it significantly more than I thought I would, and I am liking it a lot more than I did that beta. Part of that is just, kind of coming to terms with the mechanics and having a better sense of just like, oh, here's how this works. Because in a beta, when you're just like jumping in and fucking around, the tag mechanics weren't immediately clear. And so I was just like, man, I don't want to learn all these fucking characters. I'm going to do this. And then realizing like, I kind of don't need to. It'd be nice to know all of those different characters and you can assemble a team that, accounts for bad matchups. So if like, if someone is a bad matchup for Captain America, you swap out to somebody else or whatever. Like, there's a lot of stuff around that I think is probably pretty smart in the end. But it's a big, beautiful, flashy fighting game. I think the character models look really fucking neat. The story mode is broken up into chapters. I've only played the first chapter so far, but it looks like each chapter is kind of done in its own style visually. And the first one with the Avengers is like there's like a bunch of fucking beautiful anime style FMV in there that like is cool as shit. All of that is cut with a lot of static comic panels that are a little less interesting, and I think a lot of the dialogue in there is corny as shit. I think the writing is really fucking boring. Or boring is, I think the writing is like fucking really pointless. Okay, it uses the same FMV across. Okay, okay. The way they mentioned kind of different inkers and artists and stuff for the different chapters made me think that maybe it would have different FMV as well, but it is just the comic panels. I guess the style of those probably change. But like the FMV is like really nicely done. There's kind of a lot of it. For what is a relatively short story mode, at least in the chapter stuff. And I think that stuff is really neat. The story itself is fucking stupid. Or like I guess like okay. The bad guy in this game is literally named Champion. In the FMV at one point, they refer to him as Mr. Champion. And I'm like, this is the stupidest shit I have ever seen in my life. But also, I don't know, it's comic books. It's stupid. And, the idea is that he is traveling world to world looking for the best fighters. And then he is... making the worlds disappear if they can't beat him, and he just looks like the most. And people are saying he's a real Marvel character, which I couldn't tell one way or the other. If it was like this was a real character that just no one has fucking talked about in a long time, or if they made up somebody new for it. But he fucking just looks and acts like the most SNK fucking boss. Like it's literally like fucking throw wine glass on the ground, stand up, let's fight. Like that level of stupid shit. That is what they've got going on. And I think that it works out just fine for it. But he's it's just stupid. And him being an existing Marvel character, I don't think makes that any less stupid. But he's an effective big dumb bad guy with multiple forms and all of the stuff you kind of want out of a stupid fighting game boss on top of that. So it's got that going for it. It's a likable game for sure. I think the combat feels nice. Again, man, you just fucking mash that shit until fucking something cool happens. And obviously, that's only going to get you so far. There will be players you will eventually run into that fucking are better than that. and you won't be able to fucking get away with it forever. But the end result is that they've made a game that is fairly easy to pick up and play. If you're not... if you're not an accomplished fighting game player, I think that there's still a lot to like here. It's sort of the same thing that I think we said about Dragon Ball FighterZ back when that came out. Is that they found a good way to juggle those things of like, okay, there's a lot of stuff you can do here. If you're just new to fighting games and you just want to press these buttons and make shit happen, you absolutely fucking can. And then there's, deeper levels of mechanics that will come into play and be very useful to you in specific scenarios. If you are able to read those scenarios and know when to deploy that specific bit of tech or whatever, I think that stuff is pretty nice. Again, a much better game than I was expecting based on both betas, based on watching the first beta, having the second beta be completely fucking unplayable on that weekend, and then just kind of hearing from other people that had been picking it up, and other fighting game folks that had been checking it out. Like there was just a lot of people that I saw that were going like, I don't think I want to play this. I guess that makes me wonder, will there end up being, will the kind of deeper and more seasoned fighting game player eventually turn away from it out of boredom or whatever? I can't answer that question, but I think it's pretty neat for what it is. And I think the roster is fine. Like it's a good mix of like the characters you would expect to be there and then some other weird shit, I've seen people say like, who the hell are these fighters or whatever, but like at the end of the day, like, no one fucking knew who Shuma Gorath was when they put Shuma Gorath into one of those games 20 years ago or whatever, and that worked out fine. It worked out as well as it needed to for as long as it needed to, I guess. So like you need a mix of that, right? If you just put, for a couple of reasons. One, if you put everyone that everyone wants to see in the game at launch, who the fuck are your hooks for DLC? I mean, just like purely mercenary business reasons, you've got to fucking hold off. You've got to eventually say like, all right, fine, Cyclops is coming, like, or whatever, right? I saw someone saying like, oh, the X-Men, because since they break up into 4, it's kind of like, here are 4 characters that go together thematically, and you can kind of mix and match your teams all you want, but the game, for story purposes, kind of has some of that in mind. They're like, okay, here's this, and they aren't exactly the crews you expect to see, right? I mean, you could put all of the Guardians of the Galaxy in this game and have them be a team, but instead they just put Star-Lord in it, and had to put him on a team. Deadpool is in it, and it's dumb. It's stupid. I don't know, man. Deadpool does the exact stuff. Like, Deadpool really literally has a special that is called Chimichanga. It's like they just, I don't know. Like the joke of Deadpool is so fucking overdone at this point. Like, are there people out there that still like that shit? Because there's like stuff that he does. There's like, since it is a character driven on, fucking making references to other shit, like there's a bunch of fucking stupid shit in there from other fighting games that he does. Like, he makes an arcade cabinet fall out of the sky like he was Liu Kang. Like, there's a bunch of, when you hit your ultimate on players, it causes like a lag spike, and it says like rage quit on the screen for a second, which, like, the very first time you see it, you go, oh, look at that. And then you see it for a second and third time and go, oh man, fuck this. Are you kidding me? Fuck off with this bullshit. But yes, exactly. He also has some Sawada moves in there, and so like there's stuff there that you're like, oh, that's neat that they put in a lot of other references to fighting games. I think he literally has the same animation as one of the something from Dragon Ball Fighters in there, and so there's a lot of silly shit in there. And so I guess begrudgingly I have to say, like, there is something about it that you go like, okay, like, if you had to put this character in there, you at least did some fucking kind of interesting shit. However, the jokey stuff, after, being in training mode for a couple of minutes and hitting the ult a couple of times, I'm like, okay, I never need to see that ever again. In fact, I don't want to see that ever again. So, I guess be ready for that. If he ends up being a popular character or not, I don't really know. Overall, though, I think it's a pretty neat game. I am thinking I am going to change all of the VO over to Japanese because I think that would be cooler. I just think that'll be cooler. It's a neat looking game. It's funny. They did there's a more expensive version of the game and a pre-order bonus and PlayStation Plus skins, and so there's already stuff like that out there. The end result has been I have 3 different costumes for Captain America, and 2 of them are more kind of closer to classic original Captain America and not his higher tech suit or whatever that Iron Man gave him in the story or whatever. And I think that the classic costumes just look completely fucking wrong in this. Something about this art style, something about the classic outfits, I just think look wrong compared to how fucking teched up a lot of the other characters look. Like the game has a vibe. The game has an aesthetic to it that I think works. Like it does feel like here's this Japanese take on Marvel. Ultimately, like, I think that's the coolest thing about it, is that it feels like a different take on these characters that you've seen time and time again for decades. And then you start hearing some of the VO and some of the other stuff, and you're just like, okay, well, yeah, I don't know. They made Iron Man out of his suit. Sure does look like not Robert Downey Jr., and he acts smarmy and shitty in the exact same way that Robert Downey Jr. does in the films. And, that's current Iron Man, so it would be off-brand for them to not do that, I guess. But it does make me just want to swap it over to Japanese and never have to hear that bullshit ever again. Because I think a lot of the voice performances are okay in English, but not. I don't know. It's hard to know what to want, man. So for me, as someone who doesn't give a shit about Marvel, aside from fighting the characters' appearances in fighting games, And so most of my knowledge, most of my go-to, most of the things I'm going to see and go, oh, is largely because like it's stuff from fighting games, not stuff from the movies or whatever else. Like all of my shit is just like, I think it would be, and the stuff they can't do, right? Because this is all Capcom's shit at some point. But it's just like, oh, it would be cool if Wolverine has said Berserker Barrage. Like, oh, it's like they couldn't say charging stars, so instead they said this. They didn't, they instead of this naming the moves like this, they named the moves like this, which are just synonyms for the moves that they were in some of the Capcom games. And like there's sort of a weirdness around that, I guess. But I think that in some ways makes it a really a lot harder thing to nail. When we think about think about the mark that Capcom has made, not just on all of fighting games, but specifically on how we think about these Marvel characters and what their moves are and what they do in the context of a fighting game, or just kind of largely like how a lot of that other stuff works. It's big shoes to fill, it's big expectations. It's like you've all of that stuff has become muscle memory, and you're like, well, Captain America is supposed to do this, this, and this. And he doesn't do this, this, and this. He does maybe one or two of those things, and then this one is different. And I think that's cool, and I think that that's the right move. It is just sort of a weird... I bet that's a really hard problem to solve. Like, when they were designing these characters and trying to figure out what they wanted to do, I bet that's a really fucking hard shadow to get out from under, right? It's like, okay... what does Iron Man do? It's like, well, he makes fucking these bombs shoot out, and he makes a fucking giant cannon appear, and and then he goes like this, and little beams come out, and like, no. If he didn't do any of that shit, what does he do? It's like, okay, what if he does a dragon punch with his knee? Now you're talking. Now we're in business. All right, we got a game. And it's interesting from that angle as well to see these kind of alternate and different takes on fighting game characters, if we just think about them that way, as like, hey, we've made different versions of these fighting game characters that you've been seeing in and out of games for a very fucking long time. So if nothing else, like I think they did a really good job with that. However, that doesn't mean I don't want Spider-Man to say maximum spider. Doesn't mean that I don't want him to hang a fucking camera from a web. They won for JJ, Like, what the fuck am I? Like, I'm a sucker for that shit. What can I say? But ultimately, yeah, I'm having a pretty good time with it so far. It seems quite well made. The story mode is kind of throwaway. At least the chapters I've kind of dug into so far. It's fine. The cutscenes I think are the video cutscenes I think are really well done. And that's been kind of cool to see. And I'm having a hard time finding matches. Because I can't play ranked. You can only play casual, and going and just searching for a casual match seems to take forever. I've tried during the day, I tried at night, trying to find different hours. Just seems like it takes a long time to match up. It does have the lobby system and it has rooms and stuff. So you can just kind of go around and walk up to a cabinet and play somebody like in classic kind of Arxis fashion. I don't necessarily want to do that. I don't really need the lobby. There's a dumb basketball game that you could play in the lobby if you want as well. And it's all these chibi versions of all the Marvel characters that you can customize a little bit. So I took Wolverine and I just gave him 2 guns. So it's just Wolverine walking around with 2 pistols. I'm like, that's stupid. But you can do it. So, of course I did it. It's nice. I don't know. And again, the tag mechanics and the air combo stuff, which is, when we talk about the Capcom, the Versus games, and the systems that Capcom popularized in there, like eventually that stuff really got away from me. In this game, it feels very manageable. Because again, the system is such that you don't necessarily need to tag between all of your characters and all of that. And also the air combo system is not super deep. At least that's my read on it from a couple of days of fucking around with it, I guess I should say. But it is like when you nail that low heavy, and it launches them up in the air, you automatically jump up after them. There's some shit you can do. You can kind of keep them bouncing around by calling in an assist here and there, but ultimately it's not. It doesn't feel as, the Capcom's versus games could sometimes feel really fucked with that. Because those things just went on for so long in some cases. Like, this feels like, okay, I just got hit by a combo and it happens to take place in the air. There are long combos that happen on the ground as well. So, it doesn't necessarily feel like the air combos are death touches or any sort of shit like that, right? So it doesn't feel as bad as some of that other stuff does. As someone who doesn't necessarily like the air combo stuff that Capcom did, this doesn't feel necessarily as bad. And there are two versions of it. You have that automatic launch, and then there are some that'll launch up that you can chase up and do some stuff. But a lot of those combos will have enders. You'll kick them back down to the ground, for example. And okay, that's the end of that. And I think that works out reasonably well. And even the system, like, one of the other things I really didn't like going in through the beta is you don't start with all four of your characters. Like, you pick your team and then you start with your leader, but then there's stuff that happens over the course of the match that adds those players to your team. It's like if you do like a wall, like it's sort of like the thing in Injustice where if you get people up against a wall and keep hitting them, it'll break through the wall. The whole screen will scroll over one measure and you'll get a different version of the level or whatever. That will bring one character into your team. Also, I think if you lose a round, it will add a character to your team. And so with the shared health bar and all this other stuff, you don't feel at a disadvantage. If you end up in a situation where it's like 2v4 or something like that, you don't feel like, oh, I'm super fucked because I don't even have the health meters of the other guys, because that's not a factor. And I think that's nice. They found a way to kind of make this, to make it as flashy and as crazy as you want out of a tag game, but at the same time, it is grounded and not as nuts, if that makes any sense. And I think that's maybe the smartest thing they could have done in terms of trying to figure out how to make this game approachable by multiple skill levels of player and all of that. But but you do have access to more tools with the more characters you have. So obviously, there is something of an advantage when it comes to just having those assist attacks at your disposal, and so on. So it's a neat game. I played a tiny bit. They're doing another weekend for this, so I'll probably have more time to look at this next time. But I took a look at the Gears of War E-Day multiplayer beta. I was playing it on a Steam machine, which you could do that. It ran. It definitely was playable. You can make a lot of adjustments to keep that frame rate up where you need it to be. But I was just curious, like, I wonder if this thing even runs on a Steam machine. And in the process of checking it out, that's where I ended up playing it. I loaded it up on a proper PC as well, but didn't actually. I think I played through the training on that and then switched over to a Steam machine. Even with the FSR4 stuff turned on, you're running it at like 60% resolution, and like there's things about it that you certainly look at and go like, yeah, this doesn't look great, but I found it to be somewhat like it's perfectly playable on a Steam machine. I bet it would look better on an Xbox Series X though, because I bet that they are just doing a better job at kind of balancing all of the settings and what have you. But over on a regular PC, it obviously looked crisp and clean and clear the way you want it to. I ended up playing because there's a horde mode in there that I did not have time to play, but I ended up playing the multiplayer, the competitive multiplayer, and I don't know, man. Like, I'm torn because there's a lot of new movement stuff that they put in, and that stuff is really neat. Like, you can jump. And so, like, the level design is a lot different now because you can jump. The run is less of a roadie run. You have a little bit more control while you're running. And so the movement is a little bit faster overall. However, anytime you get close to anyone, it still just becomes roll around, wall bounce, shotgun bullshit. And so it's fucking pointless. So at the end of the day, I think the competitive multiplayer is like, who fucking cares, man? It's really neat that you can jump, and I'm sure that you can do that in other modes, and you can use it to jump up and climb onto walls and pull yourself up to higher areas, and so the maps have been designed with that in mind. Yeah, what is the story reason why they can jump in this prequel but forgot how? I assume, I don't know. We'd have to look at the characters and see, but like, it's because they're not wearing as much padding, right? The armor is less good. That's my assumption for a storyline reason, is that now they're wearing much bulkier in the proper Gears trilogy. They're wearing much more armor, and that's why they're not as nimble when they run, and they do the dumb roadie run thing, which was cool when they first rolled it out a zillion years ago. But now I think we can look back on it and go like, I've seen enough of that. And then yeah, you can jump and grab onto things, and it's kind of weird. You can do running slides in that game. So they've got they've got low openings that you can slide through and, knee slide, shoot, and like, it's kind of cool. But again, like in the time that I spent playing with it, it was dominated by fucking people rolling around with shotguns and doing Gears of War shit. And I'm not going to say that they should take that stuff out because, people should be able to have their fun, I guess, but it's definitely a thing of just like, I don't want anything to do with it. Like, if that's going to be what this game is, multiplayer, I don't want to play it, period. So I don't feel like they solved any kind of issues around that. It's almost unfortunate in a new way now, because there are this new movement and some of these other options that you have at your disposal. You're like, oh, this could be really fun. But instead, every encounter boils down to fucking guy rolling around being a fucking weirdo. Okay, that's cool. I guess I just won't play this ever again. Fine. The PC version of the game, interestingly enough, has full support for the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. It's got support for haptic triggers. It has gyro aiming. Even when you are configuring your settings in the game, it has a full-ass diagram of a PlayStation 5 controller in the game itself. It's cool. More games should support the PlayStation 5 controller. It's a good controller with some fun options. It is very funny that this Xbox console exclusive has full-ass support for PlayStation 5 controllers. Almost like they had bigger plans for that at some point and then ended up not doing it. Forza Horizon 6 does not have any built-in DualSense controls in it. This does. And Forza Horizon 6 probably will end up having, maybe they will patch that back into the PC version, because that game is still supposed to come to PlayStation at some point. So maybe at that time they will end up rolling support back into the PC version of the game. That would be nice if they did something with those triggers. That would be fun. Gears, I don't know. Like I want to try the Horde mode. I just didn't have time to dig into it to any serious degree. Agent 64 is out. I've not had time to play that yet, but in the wake of us ranking GoldenEye 007 for the N64 last week, which you could find that video on YouTube, this game is like an homage to that. It's got split screen and it's got online multiplayer. They did some kind of demo for Agent 64 a while back, and I remember playing it and going like, oh, this is interesting. This feels like it came from some alternate universe where GoldenEye was more influential than it was, or whatever. But they've got a single player and a co-op campaign in it as well, which I think is at least kind of cool. And so I'm looking forward to checking it out, especially now that I've spent time with GoldenEye recently. It's been fun going back to some of these games after not playing them in any kind of serious fashion in decades, you know? Like, the only time I had really spent with GoldenEye since reviewing it originally was like, oh, well, how's this N64 emulator work? And how are these controls? I hear there's a weird controller hack that does this, and, you know, messing with it for 20 minutes at a time and playing the first level again and again and going like, oh, yeah, this controller's kind of neat for this. Oh, yeah, you could kind of play it like this, and then turning it off and never playing it again. So the idea of actually like playing through a couple of those campaign levels and seeing that game again was very interesting. Star Fox 64, kind of the same deal. You know, that was a game I had not played since. I probably had not played Star Fox 64, the original actual game, but until it got ranked a handful of weeks ago. I probably had not touched that game since like the week before it came out. You know, as part of like playing some multiplayer with someone who was reviewing I did not review the game, but, you know, getting footage for a review or whatever and playing a little bit of it there. Like, that is probably the most of that game I have played. Certainly ranking it was the most of that game I have played since then. Obviously, Star Fox, they've remade a zillion times. So, you know, you touch various versions of it over the years, but it's been neat to go back to some of these kind of big ticket N64 games that I have not touched in, I guess, like 30 years. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I finally broke down and went to an arcade last week. I had a little bit of time, you know, like the kids were gone for a longer chunk of time than they normally are. So I'm like, I'm gonna fucking go and see what the hell this round one is all about. So I drove all the way out to Burbank, of all places. Arcades are terrifying now. I don't know when the last time you set foot in something, but like I was, you know, like you see these one-off, you know, like here's a picture of a machine and here's, you know, you're like, wow, that's a really big fucking cabinet for whatever the fuck this is, and then you know, when you're surrounded by them, it's really fucking wild to see rows, especially with the way round one does it, because they've packed that place so full of rhythm games. And so I was able to play a bunch of Gitadora, the current, I guess, version of Guitar Freaks, which now has a separate touch panel that you do, and all these goddamn arcade machines, you're supposed to tap your phone to them to maintain your progress and all this crazy shit. They had a gigantic Tomb Raider cabinet. They had a Tomb Raider arcade game that was a light gun game for up to 4 players with a gigantic fucking like faded looking projection screen on it. I was like, I'm just like staring at it going like, what the fuck? Why did this happen? How the hell did this happen, man? This is so fucking crazy. I did, other than kind of fucking around with it, I what is it? Dance Rush? Is this the game with like the gigantic pad? I want to play that, but I want to watch someone play it so I know what the fuck I'm supposed to do, because I've seen videos of people playing it, but I never see. I don't see the screen and them dancing to see what the hell it is they're supposed to do, to win or whatever. So I ended up not playing it, but I did play. It's Raw Thrill's NBA Jam ripoff. Is it NBA Superstars? Is that the name of this thing? Yes, NBA Superstars, which is their it's got Tim Kitzrow doing the announcing. Like we talked about it when it came out, because they put out a trailer and all of this other stuff. I finally got to see one of them and try it out. I really don't like it. And part of it is because it's got things that are different from NBA Jam, right? Like there's aspects of it that you're just like, okay, they made a 3-on-3 game instead of 2-on-2, which is what Jam was. But the later Midway games did eventually become 3-on-3. Even if they were only 4 human players, you would always have a computer player on your team, and you'd be able to change players or whatever. This game, you do end up picking your team and picking 3 player. You pick 1 player, and the computer picks the other 2, I guess, on your team. But instead of so they made it so. Like the button that is supposed to be the steal button is now a change player button when you don't have the ball. And so you keep running up and mashing that button to take the ball, but you run up and change players and go, fuck. Because now swiping is you mash turbo to swipe instead. And it's like this really specific control change that I think they chose poorly. Like, obviously, if you want to make a game that you can change players, which is what the console versions of NBA Jam even allowed that, there was already kind of a way to make those changes, too, that I think some of the Midway games had done. And so making it so you mash on turbo to steal the ball, I think feels really crazy. That's minor shit, right? It's a control change, whatever, you would get used to it. The larger problem, I think, is that the players all feel really sluggish. They don't cut back and forth as fast as you want them to. Again, and this is them as much as it is me, because obviously they're trying to make the next NBA Jam. They went and got Tim Kitzrow. They, the presentation on the court is damn near identical to what they did with Jam and Showtime and even NBA Hoops or whatever the fuck. They are very much trying to make that game again. So it is as much on them as it is on me and my love of those original games. I'm certainly not the only person to have a fondness for NBA Jam. I'm sure all of the people at Raw Thrills like it as well. So I'm sure some percentage of them worked at Midway when that game was being made. But I think the players feel really sluggish to me in a way that is a fucking bummer. More than anything else, that is the thing that stuck out to me. Obviously, they don't have you catching on fire after 3 shots, but they do have a meter that you build up. It's electricity and not fire. Totally different. Do not sue. Original concept. And when you fill the meter, you're electric for a little while, but it feels like the electricity is not as perhaps overpowered as being on fire in NBA Jam was. I ended up playing a couple games of that and was just like, it feels very off the mark for what you would want out of a new take on NBA Jam, which is, again, even if it's not the name, even if it's not the shoes, it is extremely what they are trying to make. I've been wanting to see that for about a year now. I'm trying to think how long that game's been out. I remember they put out a press release when the game shipped, and they were like, it's in all the Dave and Buster's. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have time to go to any of that. So it was nice to be able to see some of that, and kind of just see the rows and rows and rows of rhythm games shaped like washing machines. And I look at them and go, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what part of this am I even supposed to touch? I'm like staring at it going like, you probably touch around the edge, right? I bet things come out from the middle, and it's just Tempest. It's poppin' music, but in a tube. It's a tube shooter fucking rhythm game. It was fun to walk around and take a look at that stuff. And also the gigantic, they had some fucking licensed Top Gun game that looked like it was fucking 10 feet tall or something. It was just, the screen was fucking massive. No, it was more than 10 feet tall. It had to be more like 15 or something. But it was just these gigantic fucking screens, and then you just sit there at a turret, and you're shooting. It's like a light gun shooter. And there was a ton of Chinese light gun shooters that looked super fucking shitty. Like just looking down and going like, huh. Yeah, I don't know. This looks like a really fucking bad light gun game. But it was a lot of light gun games with vertical screens or 2 vertical screens side by side so you can play 2-player. And the Top Gun thing was just fucking gigantic, tall, just crazy. And so if you have not been able to get to an arcade in a while and you have the ability to do so, you should just go in there and fucking look around, man. Like if it's well stocked with what, you know, qualifies as like modern arcade games, it's fucking nuts. They had that Halo game that's been around for that Halo game's been around for a really long time now. But they had one of those. There's a Mission Impossible arcade cabinet where you're like back to back in a light gun thing, like you're standing in it's just the scope, the gargantuan nature of some of these machines when you think about what environmental cabinets used to look like fucking 40 years ago is bizarre. You know, like you look at this and go like, I remember when standing inside of a Discs of Tron cabinet was neat as fuck. This thing is ridiculous. What am I even fucking looking at here? And then round 1 has they have a ton of crane games and all that other shit too. And like a miniature, like, well, it's full-size bowling, but it is not a lot of lanes. But the gigantic big cabinet stuff is really fucking wild. And yeah, I think about like the nature of these games, and you know, in the 80s and 90s, you would convert games to other games when they stopped making money, right? And now all this stuff is just so purpose built for this thing. I mean, that's why they probably still have that fucking Halo cabinet, right? Because it's not like you can turn it into something else, not easily. Yeah, it was bizarre. And they had like I bet the oldest games they had were probably either that Halo game or the Mario Kart, like there's a Mario Kart arcade game, or even like, you know, the gigantic Doodle Jump cabinet, which I know has existed for over a decade. Yeah, I imagine that's why that all of those games are still there, because what are you going to do with them unless you completely run out of room? You know, over in the corner, they had a couple of sound Voltexes, and you know, like just sitting there behind stuff that's just like, I don't know, we still got them. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that many people want to play this anymore or whatever. You know, they're like, yeah, we got some Initial D cabinets over here. You know, but like they had the arcade version of Street Fighter 6, which I believe was called a Street Fighter 6 type arcade, which is weird, but they had that, and that's kind of it. As far as like non-rhythm, non-giant, like fucking ridiculous cabinets go, they just had some Vulexes with Street Fighter 6 in it. And that's it, man. They had a bunch of weird redemption machines. They had some gigantic Castlevania redemption machine. They had a WWE one that kept showing footage of John Cena doing an elbow drop, and it didn't look great. You know, like, I bet that they wish that they got better footage of wrestling to put in this, but maybe they don't actually care. Like, it's just a bunch of bizarre stuff. There's a DDR game that is also a redemption machine, so you're playing DDR for tickets. Like, what? There's so much, like, again, it's been so fucking long since I've like seen like a modern arcade, because, you know, usually I end up in arcades that are like, hey, we got a bunch of pinball machines, or hey, we you know, we're doing a deliberately retro thing, and so we've got classic games here like Mr. Deuce Castle, and you know, like games you want to play. But this was like all this wild shit. And it was, you know, even they didn't even have like the older Raw Thrill, you know, it wasn't like they had like the fucking dumb Fast and the Furious game. There was no Cruisin' Blast or any of that shit. Like as far as like driving game type stuff went, it was really just an Initial D. And that might have been the only one, but it's fascinating. It was a fascinating fucking trip for sure. I'm glad I went. And I was thinking, like, you know, I kind of went thinking, like, I wonder if I'm going to take the kids to something like this, because I know I want to, you know, take them to, like, a bigger, crazier arcade. But, like, they're not ready to play rhythm games. And, you know, because I have DDR mats here. They should probably get decent at that first. before we go and spend $9 a player, whatever fucking. They've obfuscated the amount of money it costs to play an arcade game really well as well, because they switch to, like, obviously you recharge a card, you load up a card with $30 or whatever, and then you scan you slide the card to play it. But like each game takes some different number of credits based on probably how much they paid for the cabinet. Who knows, whatever, how new it is, whatever. But like, they don't necessarily like put up front, like you can stare at the thing you're swiping and go like, okay, this says it's going to take this many credits to do one swipe, and it's like 4.8, and I think I have 30 point something, and what do I like? They've completely they've filthed up what used to be a very fucking clear-cut customer experience of put a quarter in a machine. Sometimes you put 2 quarters in a machine. And the swipe card stuff has made it pretty filthy as a result. But it was very fucking interesting to see that stuff. Super glad I went. Why don't we get into the news? Grand Theft Auto is coming to Netflix. That's right. The next GTA trailer is going to debut on a subscription service. Why? Because fuck you. That's why. It's a 6-hour exclusive, I believe. It will eventually show up on YouTube. Yeah. So so what is it? August 27th, noon Pacific time. The GTA Grand Theft Auto 6, an extended look, will show up on Netflix, and we don't really know much else other than that when it comes to the content of this. I assume it is more than a trailer. I assume that this is going to be an extended look, as they might say, that this would be gameplay, perhaps narrated. I assume that there is going to be talking in this, that they tell you a thing or two about the game. That would make some sense for something like this. I would almost say, like, hey, you could do an hour-long thing that's like, here's some people at the studio working away on the game or something. But I bet it does end up being a trailer and some gameplay at a minimum. And then it will appear on YouTube 6 hours later, so at 6 p.m. Pacific time, it will make its way to the rest of the world, as if it won't be pirated off of Netflix, I guess, the way everything else on Netflix is, I suppose. Netflix has gone on record and said they don't care if people like cover it, like if people stream it or whatever, if they want to do reaction content or whatever the fuck. They said, hey, that's okay, which I think is kind of weird, because it sort of nullifies the exclusive deal that they did. I would assume that Netflix paid a chunk of money for this. And so to that I say, good on Rockstar for finding a way to extract some more money from someone else on this. I doubt very much that Rockstar went to them and said, we want to put this on your service. And Netflix said, well, if you give us this much money, we will. I bet they were like, oh, fuck yeah, yeah. This is probably pretty smart for them, because it means that on Netflix, they are already pushing this trailer. It is already, like, if you're a Netflix subscriber, and there are a lot of those, it turns out, you are probably getting pushed algorithmically. They are saying, hey, this GTA thing is coming up. You can add it to your list now, and we'll let you know when it's available. You know, like they're already doing that sort of stuff for this. And in a world where the majority of people who play a Grand Theft Auto game simply do not interact with video games in the video game industry and video game coverage in any kind of meaningful sense, this is probably a pretty good way to further spread the word that that this exists and is coming soon. And I bet in some sick way, this will end up being the best gaming-related thing Netflix has ever done, because all the other the majority of the other game stuff they've done has been shitty. So I guess good on them. I don't really, like there's a quote here that hit in this press release. Grand Theft Auto reveals have become cultural moments in their own right. That's Brandon Reig of Netflix's VP of Nonfiction Series. The anticipation and fandom around GTA 6 is unprecedented, and we're honored that Rockstar Games has partnered with us to debut the next part of the Grand Theft Auto story with Netflix members first. It's a reflection of what we hope Netflix is becoming, a place where the most ambitious storytelling from any medium can find the biggest possible audience. Yeah, that's YouTube does that. Like if we're talking biggest possible audience, like sorry, that's not true in any fucking way for a piece of content that doesn't need to live behind a paywall and won't 6 hours later. That's a very silly thing to say. But that's what they hope it's becoming. That's what he hopes Netflix is becoming. I don't know. I am not a Netflix subscriber, which Strauss Zelnick said in his recent interview. If you're not, you should get it. It's good. It's just like, yeah, just check out this Netflix. Which I think is very funny. But no, Netflix wronged me by not having the movies I needed when I needed them, and I vowed to never fucking sign up for that shit ever again. I think that this is fine. I think that, again, I think this is interesting in a world where there's like where we're all so fractured. Everything is so splintered. We talk a lot about the monoculture being completely dead across every single medium. How do you market to people? How do you get the word out about a thing you're doing? So many people are blocking advertisements. Like, it's difficult to market to people, especially in a mainstream sense these days. There are sporting events sometimes that get these kind of big trailer moments. That used to be how they announced every year's Call of Duty used to be unveiled during the NBA finals. They just bought a commercial slot and just ran it during NBA finals. And that seemed like a good way to do that. And for that demographic, it probably still is to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, it's hard to reach a lot of people. And I think that this is splashy in a way that I think makes a lot of sense for a game the size of Grand Theft Auto 6. I don't think there are very, very many other games that could get away with this. What's a game that is of sufficient size that you could unveil it in this way, unveil it behind a paywall? I've seen some people suggest that Elder Scrolls is maybe big enough to do that. I would say that they would never live it down because Microsoft already has a subscription service. Microsoft already has customers, and those people would feel slighted if they were told, hey, by the way, thank you for subscribing to Game Pass Ultimate. You should sign up for a subscription on Netflix so you can learn about the next Minecraft patch. That's not something you can get away with. That is just simply, people would be fucking furious. I mean, people are not stoked about this GTA thing either, but I have to begrudgingly look at it and go yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's actually probably pretty fucking smart. It's a flashy, stunty kind of thing that, again, only Rockstar can get away with it. Because it has a mainstream appeal, Pat says you could put a new Metal Gear behind a paywall. I don't think so. It's not the same size or scale or scope. It has a worldwide appeal that the Japanese audience would not necessarily be into this sort of thing. I think Metal Gear people would just pirate the thing and watch it later. GTA, there are people that are weird enough about it and mainstream enough about it to where they will either be willing to seek it out or they will just encounter it as a normal course of well, I'm already a Netflix subscriber and look at this thing. Oh, wow. I don't think Metal Gear has the cachet, especially after all these years of shit that has been stacked up onto that thing. Zelda. Well, yeah, if Nintendo was going to put out a Zelda trailer, they would put it on Nintendo Today. You know. And yeah, as you know, JZGA says, since game magazines are now dead, putting GTA 6 on the cover of Game Informer just wasn't going to cut it in today's age. Of course, right? I mean, there's no gaming specific publication or place online or whatever that is large enough for this. It's a big part of why publishers don't do those sorts of reveals with magazines and websites anymore, right? Why would they? They can just post it to YouTube themselves. So there's no real reason for it there. Yeah, it's a bold move. It has succeeded in getting people talking. I'm sure a lot of people will watch it. Netflix will probably be happy with the outcome on their end, and then 6 hours later it'll just be on YouTube. So I guess like that's cool. It's something different, and I think that probably satisfies on the Rockstar side. It feels special for them, which they really like to do. So it's so I think it's probably a victory for all sides on that front, and it's hard to get too worked up about it one way or the other. I just hope it's a significant piece of content. I don't even really care about it, like ultimately, because you know the game's going to be out soon enough. Like, who gives a shit? Like, hey man, you want to see this trailer? Like, yes, I need to be sold on. I might play this GTA. Like, whatever, man. Like, that game is already pre-sold so many fucking copies. That was the other the thing out of the Zelnick interview is he said that it seems like they are trending ahead of what their projections were as far as pre-orders go, and that a lot of people were pre-ordering the expensive version of the game, which makes logical sense because the only people hyped up enough about it to pre-order it this early and pre-order a digital game at all, really, are people that are, you know, also so into it that they want to buy the expensive version of the game anyway. So, you know, so whatever. Yeah, that's, what is that? The 27th. That's a little over 2 weeks out. I don't know, man. Gaming's weird now. I don't know if you noticed. Ghost Recon Wildlands got a significant update. That's how weird video games are. They put out a free update called Last Rites. They put the Predator stuff back in the game. Remember, they did a Predator thing for Wildlands and then took it out because it was like a temporary thing, but that's back in now. This new content has some new story mission stuff with it. There's some new supporting kind of cosmetic DLC to come with it if you are interested in buying some stuff, but that happened. As well as that, now you can play the game at 4K 60 frames per second across all platforms. That is something. So it is still technically a PlayStation 4 game, but when you launch it on a PS5 Pro, as I have done, because there's a bunch of drug submarines I need to blow up, it runs a lot nicer now there than it used to. So that's kind of cool. It's one of those, you know, Ubisoft really is the only company that does this. I feel Ubisoft supports their games to a fucking strange degree sometimes. When we think about the years and years of like Riders Republic and Crew updates and stuff that they've done, like, it's kind of wild, the support path that some of these games get. And so I guess I'm not as shocked about the idea of Wildlands getting an update all these years later, kind of out of nowhere. There was some interview type stuff that they did with, you know, someone who's on the team, I guess is now running the project, who had kind of ran some of the live service stuff for Wildlands when it was a new game. Kind of said, hey, you know, like, people are playing this game still, and they're playing it in ways we could not have anticipated. Like, they're taking it way more milsim serious than we ever, you know, accounted for. And so they've tried to do some things that would kind of leave the game in a good state for players that want to keep doing that sort of stuff, as well as adding some new content for everyone else. And on top of that, like, I don't know what's in it, but there was a sizable Division 2 patch this morning because I still have that installed. Yeah, I don't know. Like, as weird as Ubisoft is, and you know how their upcoming games and like all of that stuff kind of feels all over the place, it is kind of cool that they do seem to support their games a lot longer than most, certainly most other major companies. Like, most other major companies seem to just like walk away from games. That phone game, the Division, the free-to-play Division game, which is called something. It's the Division : something. Resurgence. The Division Resurgence is now officially out on PC as of the 5th. I don't know if that's gotten any better or not, because I tried it out when it was in an early access state on PC, and it was clearly just an Android game that they were fucking running on PC, and it looked like shit for a PC game, and still had a bunch of UI stuff that would make a lot of sense on a touch screen or, you know, on a phone. And I don't know if they have cleaned any of that up or not, but it sure left a bad fucking impression. Yeah, I don't know. That is on Steam now, as well as I'm sure whatever Uplay store, Ubisoft Connect, whatever the hell they're calling it this month. And there's a part of me that wants to download it all over again and see if they did anything else to it, or if it still just looks like a phone game, because yuck. This story comes to us from IGN, though I guess the interview is originally from a site called Gamer Braves, which I assume is an Atlanta-based organization. Kazuhisa Wada, who's the producer for P Studio over at Atlas, was being interviewed and kind of said he feels that they need to do remakes. He says it's something that we, quote, I think we have to do it. And he's talking about remakes of Persona 1 and 2. So I agree with him, actually, that that's something that they eventually have to do. You know? They've remade 3. They're remaking 4 again. I would be fucking extremely interested in seeing what the hell they would do with, because they did what they remade Persona 1 on the PSP, right? But they, you know, it's a very kind of standard, straightforward remake of Persona 1, if I remember correctly. I think they need to do 2, and they need to combine both of the releases of 2 into one package and remake that. Because yeah, they only released the first, or like one of the 2 Persona 2 games got released in the States, and the other one did not, which is fucking stupid. But that was a very long time ago. And then Persona 1 is just such a completely different game. When you look at Persona 1 compared to where Persona is today, just stylistically, it's fucking crazy. And so I wonder, like, that got me, you know, I figure if they do remake Persona 1 and 2, like, you kind of have to modernize those into the modern Persona template, right? I mean, you don't just go and remake that isometric looking Persona 1 again, as much as I would fucking kind of be into that in a sickening way. I think it would be really interesting to see those stories and characters and everything totally redone in a way that looks like the way current Persona games look. You know, like their modern way of making those games. And so doing 1 and 2 all over again, which I think would be a massive undertaking, right? Because those games were not built to be in that format. I think you could translate those stories into that format relatively. I mean, it's doable, right? But as far as like the amount of work it would take to remake those games, it would probably be a much larger undertaking. than, you know, when they decided to do Persona 3 again, or obviously Persona 4 again, you know, because the vibe and the template had already been pretty well established by that point. So yeah, I would be, as someone who I remember Persona 1 very fondly. Persona 2 I thought was fine back then, but I don't know. I don't have a lot of specific memories of Persona 2. I think that was really, really, really close to the end of my time with that genre for a very long time. But, you know, I reviewed the original Persona as well and really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I would be really interested to see them do those over again and make them kind of feel like I don't think that would be a step backwards. I think I don't think there's like stuff about those first two games that you absolutely need to have faithful remakes of it. I think it would be really cool to see those things updated into a modern Persona style. I think that specifically would be cool to see. An interesting undertaking, at least. And I think that they absolutely need to do both parts of Persona 2 and release them as one big game, or, you know, whatever they end up doing. But like that's something that, hey man, Final Fantasy VII released you know, one game across 3 games. They could at least do 2 Persona 2s across 2 games, right? Like that's right. They should do that. Of course, first they have to make Persona 6, so a lot of work to do. If you bought the cloud streaming version of Aliens Fireteam Elite for the Nintendo Switch, you can no longer play it because they have shut the servers off for it. According to IGN, there is an update on this story. Cold Iron Studios, who developed the game, is not going to refund people who bought the Switch version, but they are working to provide a discount to players for the Switch 2 version of the sequel. So if you want to play Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 on a Switch 2, they will, in theory, be able to give you some kind of discount for it. The cloud streaming stuff on Switch 1 always seemed like this incredibly fraught thing that just, like, when it happened, it was like, this is a terrible idea. Like, this is going to lead to some kind of fucking heartbreak down the line. And they did it with there was a Kingdom Hearts that was released this way as well, right? The Kingdom Hearts collection was cloud based on Switch 1, which I'm of the mind. I think these Aliens Fireteam Elite players deserve better than just a discount on the sequel. However, the Kingdom Hearts players got exactly what they deserve. If you can find more ways to rip off Kingdom Hearts players, I think that's probably just a good thing for gaming in general. So good on them. They did a discount in that case as well, where if you were going to rebuy the games on Switch 2, the Kingdom Hearts stuff, they did provide some kind of discount for the people who invested in the fucking cloud version. Just again, cloud-based subscription services are one thing, right? Because they are often attached to a library, not just the games you own. In fact, for a while there, you could not just bring the games you owned. You had to be a subscriber to the thing. I think that there's something about that at least makes some sort of holistic sense, right? Here's this package of subscription services that you can cloud stream, but also, hey, you can, you also are subscribing to this thing to get access to some games, and yes, you can stream them and whatever else. I think when you get into this thing where you're buying a cloud version of a game that's a one-off purchase and not part of some larger service that can kind of like wax and wane as games change and what have you, like that just seemed like a setup for failure out of the gate. Of like, oh, well, these servers are certainly not going to last forever. Like, this is definitely going to get shut down at some point. Like, there's no fucking sensible reason for these servers to stay on in perpetuity because they were built to fucking play like 2 games, and so that always felt like a gigantic ripoff waiting to happen. So I guess I'm not surprised to see that is exactly how this is unfolded. For Switch One players. Are these the only two? Was there a Resident Evil game that was also a cloud game? I feel like there was a little bit more of this, but maybe it is just those two. Yeah, RE7. Okay, so yeah, so there's been a handful of those. And every single one of those just seemed like this is a fucking terrible idea. And Hitman was a cloud game, right? Control? Wow, okay. Yeah, dude. I don't want to say like, that consumers need to also fucking watch out for themselves when they're figuring out what they're going to buy or not, but like, I don't know, that shit just looked dumb from like 10 miles away. Just like, oh, these are eventually going to go away. Like, don't buy these. This is a terrible fucking thing that they're doing. So here we are. They've shut it down. And here we are. Roblox. It's falling off a fucking cliff, man. Who the hell is playing Roblox anymore? Their daily active users over there at the Roblox factory, way down compared to their peak of last year. That's right. Their daily active users are only 123 million players. The absolute shits, right? Man, fuck that thing. That they're down from their peak of 152 million players last year, according to IGN.com. They gave an earnings call that actually cost them a lot of money in stock value because they talked a little bit about some changes they're making to how they kind of promote games and how they kind of optimize around different types of games. And also, seemingly, there has just not been a big viral breakout hit on Roblox for a little bit now. Like Grow a Garden has maybe fallen off a little bit. The sequel to it did not do it the way that they thought it was hopefully going to do, I guess. And so they've tried to make some changes here around how they promote things. They have also rolled out a lot of age verification stuff that is going to change the way that kids interact with the platform, which is a good change they should make. They're blaming the changes, according to IGN, or they're blaming there's a drop in in-game spending, which Roblox is blaming on changes that are meant to prioritize recommending better quality games to kids that no longer, quote, emphasize short-term monetization over long-term retention. And so Roblox is trying to, if you're kind of reading between the lines on that, they're trying to promote higher quality games to kids instead of just the slop that turns a profit fast. Instead of the stuff that people just like jump into and immediately spend money because it's a dumb viral thing and then it's gone the next week and they got to do it all over again. So it sounds like they're trying to push people towards deeper and perhaps better experiences. And the stock price took a fucking huge hit because the people fucking investing in it don't give a shit about the quality of Roblox games. And they're saying that there are tough comparisons over the rest of the year, again, because the game did so well last year that some of the revenue drops are kind of natural, according to them. They're saying that they'll be down 14 to 18% during the next quarter, and that they have not provided a new forecast for the final quarter at all. IGN got a quote from Matthew Dolgan, who's part of a financial results firm called Morningstar. Here is this quote: Roblox had a terrible second quarter across virtually every engagement and payment metric. Everything took a step backwards this quarter, and growth is now in question. So that's interesting. I don't know. Like, anecdotally, I'll say that, like, as someone who is still checking in on Roblox here and there, it does feel like, when we first started streaming Roblox a little bit ago, when I first started showing it off in a hey, look at this nightmare kind of way, there were like insane numbers on some of these individual games, and there are still big numbers on a lot of those games, but like they're falling off. Like we talked about the brain rot stuff a lot, and it feels like that has really fallen off a cliff in terms of its popularity. Like, memes run their course, right? It's the problem when you build a platform that is best suited to capitalize on memes for middle schoolers. Like, that shit moves fast. And if there's not a big one taking a place of the thing that fell off, like, yeah, you're going to have to ride this wave as it crashes in, and so I guess I'm not shocked as someone who's been looking at Roblox off and on for a bit now. It doesn't seem like the way it used to. It does feel like a lot of it is falling off. And the individual games I was kind of checking out seem to be scrambling and trying different monetization tactics. And like there's like something changed. And I assume it's part of because some of these games are just not getting promoted to people the same way that they used to. But it feels like that there's like some of those games feel desperate the way that they are changing, and the quickness with which they're throwing shit at the wall and seeing like what sticks. Like it's interesting to see. I don't think that this is some existential crisis for Roblox. I mean, obviously they still have over 100 million fucking players a day. Like, it's not fucking going anywhere, right? But it is interesting to see it feel like it is coming apart a little bit. It doesn't feel like a fever breaking. I'm not going to look at this and go like, oh, well, they're doomed and now regular gaming is back on the menu, right? I mean, there's still a lot of kids for whom Roblox is the primary way they interact with video games. I saw someone, this might have been an email that came in, but we were talking about Mecha Chameleon and the popularity of it on PC, and that there were already knockoffs on Roblox. And so if you're a Roblox player, you're just going to play it there for free. And it's probably a worse experience, but you don't know that because you don't play games on other platforms. You just play games on Roblox because you're a kid and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And that is something that is, like trapping people in that platform and keeping them from going out and looking at other options because everything just keeps showing up there one way or the other, right? It's a weird problem. Either way, it does not seem like, Roblox is not going to go away anytime soon. And in fact, they are trying to roll out some kind of new AI tool for people to use to make new games, which sounds like a fucking absolute shit factory. But I guess you could say that about a lot of Roblox. Why don't we get into some emails? podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Send me your emails to that address and that address only. And we can talk. Let's see here. Max in New Hampshire writes in about Marathon. I love Marathon, and I hope it is only one major content update away from breaking through to a wider player base, and if any studio could do it, I'd bet on Bungie. What changes to the game do you want to see, and does that differ from what you think would make the game popular to a wider audience? I think that I don't know. I think that obviously they can still pull a lever of like making it free to play or something, right? But I think that there is, the games that become breakout hits become those breakout hits fast, usually. It's not a case where they're plugging away for a couple of years and then hit upon something that gets a huge surge. Now, the changes they've been making to the game have at times brought more players in. If you're looking at those player counts and trying to figure it all out or whatever, like, yeah, people come, people go. They're going to try more stuff that is less PvP focused. It seems to be, the direction they're going in. Like, the big thing for this season was letting more players play Vault Breaker and play it with no other player teams in the environment, so you can kind of have a different type of challenge there. And I think that's a good, smart thing. People seem to really enjoy that. They then further adjusted it so that people could play it solo. It is still a pretty fucking difficult piece of content. It's great to be able to see it as someone who was not going to be able to put in the time to, go and play the game seriously enough to see it otherwise. But it's still a very fucking jagged piece of content that you are not going to have an amazing time playing unless you already like what Marathon is putting down. So, it's easy to say like, oh, some of these games are just one update away from breaking through, but like over time you get this buildup of like players that are not fucking into it, and nothing's going to bring them back to it. They've already made up their mind, and a bunch of other games are coming out, and Grand Theft Auto is a couple of months away, and the competitive setting for multiplayer games is fucking wild, right? And so it's difficult to believe that there is any one update you could make to a game that's been out for this long that is suddenly going to change its fortunes, right? I don't think the game is an abject failure, but I don't know, again, not knowing what they want to see out of it numbers wise. It's hard to kind of say one way or the other. And so it's a tricky thing, because that is, again, I'll say it again, I think that is the best game I've played so far this year. I think Marathon's fucking incredible. I think that aesthetically, gameplay wise, I think they've done a lot of fucking really fascinating shit to that game that I think in some ways make it more approachable. But at the end of the day, it is meant to be a fucking like a rough experience. Like it is not meant to be some cakewalk, just wander around, shoot guys. Like it is supposed to be sweaty, if you will. And they'll do more things that don't involve player versus player combat, and I think that that's probably smart. But it's hard to envision a scenario where like the game suddenly like sees a massive surge in players or whatever, right? But I think that what they made is really good. But what they made is something that I think, it doesn't necessarily have the appeal, a massive amount of appeal. And this is something we said about extraction shooters all along. I think they've done a better job than damn near anyone at finding ways to make those concepts more appealing to a larger group of players. Some people would say that Arc Raiders is doing a great job on that too, but Arc Raiders feels like it's turned a corner as well. I don't know. Like it doesn't. I don't know. Like they seem like they are just sort of existing as well. But like, yeah, I when you say you'd bet on Bungie, I might have said that as well. But like, I don't know. Like they've lost so many people. I'm at a point now where I guess I don't know this for sure because I don't know who works there and don't know. It's not something I keep super close tabs on. I don't think I know anyone that works at Bungie anymore. Like I used to know a handful of people that came from, people I worked with in the past. And, just like there have been a bunch of people that have been at Bungie over the years. And I don't know who works there anymore, And so it's sort of a, what kind of capabilities does that studio have to do big work on Marathon? Is how long will they be given the opportunity to do so? I think there's a lot of stuff there that you just go like, I don't really know. I don't have the answers to those questions because I think that's a lot of stuff that is, some of it is wrapped up in Sony's desires. Some of it is wrapped up in, what does Sony want to do with Bungie going forward? What is Sony's appetite for live service going forward? Like, how do they, like I know that they have some centralized services now, and so it's not just a matter of like how many people are quote unquote at Bungie, because there's central teams they could be tapping into as well. But like, at the end of the day, what do I want to see? I want to see the game be something that I can approach more frequently and have something that resembles slightly more frequent progress. I think you have a couple of, you end up with a few too many runs that where you go like, oh man, I came out of that with like almost nothing. I made very little progress on any of my contracts, and I think that gets discouraging over time. You don't need to turn it into Call of Duty, meter goes up after every match or anything like that, but I think that there's probably a balance there. That they, that I personally would like to see, but I think some of that goes against the what they made. I think some of that is the antithesis of the game that they are trying to make, and so I don't know that I want to push too hard on any of that sort of stuff. What do I think they could do that would make the game popular to a wider audience? Dude, if I had answers to questions like that, I would be working as a fucking consultant. I would be making a lot of money fucking telling people how to fix their games, right? I don't fucking know. What do you do to make Marathon better? Like what do you do to make Marathon more popular than it is now? Could they put a trailer on Netflix or something? Maybe that would work. I don't know. It's a shame. I think, from an aesthetic standpoint, Marathon is fucking beautiful. It is just such a just visuals, music, sound effects, like so many things come together in such a fucking magical way in that game. And all of it, I think, is in service of the game that is. And so I like Marathon on its terms. But Marathon on its terms doesn't always fit into the life I lead. You know what I mean? Where I am playing a bunch of other games and all of this. And so it's easy for me to fall away from even games I love because I've just got other stuff going on. And I think Marathon is somewhat of a victim of that. Ironically, if Marathon ran on Linux, I probably would have played it a lot more just because I've been fucking around with Steam machines and Bazite over the last several months. Like, it would have become the test bed, test rig game, because it would have been something I could have played on all of those machines. I don't think that that's anything that changes their story one way or the other either. But I think Marathon does narrative in a really fucking fascinating way. I think that they've had a lot of really good supporting assets outside of the game that they've posted. A lot of really cool shit. Like, they were off to a really interesting start as well, because like when that game launched, and I don't know if this was something that they seeded. I mean, I assume it's something they seeded themselves, but like there was a lot of Marathon cosplay that I kept bumping into on TikTok for like a month or so after the game came out. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, is this game going to break through in that way? Is that kind of, and that kind of tapered off, and it didn't really, I don't really see much of that anymore. I don't know. Maybe people are still out there doing that. The algorithm is what it is, right? So maybe there's a million people out there doing it, but who can say? But yeah, it's something that feels like it had a real good opportunity, but at the end of the day, that game is what it is. And what that game is something that is deliberately fucking abrasive. That is part of what makes it fucking awesome, is I think they found a really good way to thread a needle there, and they're still fine-tuning this, as they go, right? Because they're trying to find ways to appeal to more players. But it was the big worry when you look at stuff like Tarkov, and you go like, oh, we're going to make a game like that. And you're like, why? What the fuck is wrong with you? You're sick. Like, no one fucking wants to play that fucking bullshit. Like, they found a really good way to thread that needle narratively. So they found a way to make a world that you wanted to go back to over and over again, that it made sense for you to go back to over and over again. And the way that they built that story with the shells and everything, the way that they made it fit into classic original Marathon is fucking like masterful. For a live service game in 2026 to be able to meaningfully call back to fucking these ancient Macintosh games, it's fucking wild. But at the end of the day, that game is a fucking multiplayer game that is competitive in nature, where you are fucking other players over for their shit. And when you fucking do it, it feels real fucking good. And when it gets done to you, it doesn't feel so fucking good. And so you have to be the type of player that can ride that fucking wave if you want to stick with this. And that's why they keep, they keep moving in further in this direction of like, how do we find a way to make this game friendlier for people that don't want that, while still sticking to this thing that they believed in when they were making it, right? I think that's a really fucking hard problem to solve. It's a damn near impossible problem to solve. And so I don't know that they could have done better than they did, because again, from where I'm sitting, they have made one of, if not the best game of the year. We still got 6 months to go. Maybe 10 games better than Marathon will come out, but I fucking doubt it. And so qualitatively, I look at it and go like, they fucking did it. Like, they fucking damn near knocked it out of the park in so many different ways. However, they still made this fucking niche, insane thing that people thought was going to be the next battle royale at some point, or they thought like, oh, we're going to make one of these, it's going to be huge. Like, no one did. Even Arc Raiders, which seemed like it was taking over that world for a while, has, kind of fallen off along the way, right? It's just not the genre that, is probably ever going to break through to that degree. And I think now we can say that pretty fucking definitively, right? Now that we've had a couple of like games that have been, I guess, a little more successful at breaking through than some of the other stuff that has come before it. I mean, whether that's Tarkov or whether that's the fucking game where you're running around the fucking marsh all the fucking time. Whatever the fuck that game was called. But between Arc and Marathon, I think we've seen really good, solid takes on the genre, well-considered takes on the genre that, yes, Hunt Showdown, that was the game I was thinking of. That fucking thing. Which was, Hunt Showdown's a popular game, like, don't get me wrong. It is not like breakthrough mainstream crazy success, but none of these games have been. I think Arc and Marathon were going to be your best shots at that, right? Because I think Arc had some interesting ideas that softened the experience in some cool ways. I think Marathon found some different answers to some of those similar questions. And I think that between those two games, and again, pushed out on console and, like all of that stuff. I think that, the die has been cast, I think, for the genre. I think that is there anyone out there still working on games like this? Are there things that are out there that they're trying to, to do this still, or have developers finally learned their lesson and they're like, okay, we just watched Sony throw a bunch of money at this. We watched Arc have a really interesting arc of popularity, and even that hasn't been able to sustain it. Like they did not sustain it in a Helldivers like way. There was a version there of, like, there was a minute there where you're like, okay, Arc figured it out. Like, they're now going to have this Helldivers 2-esque run of popularity, and then that kind of fizzled out there before it could get there. And now, yeah, you have like Dark and Darker and some of these, games that are going to do things with like Melee, games that'll try to change it up. But those are going to be games that like launch on PC and don't need to have the massive player base that some of these other games did, because larger studios made them. Bungie's budgets are different than some of that other stuff, right? And so I think we'll continue to see some smaller stabs in that direction. And yeah, I don't think that the Marathon's a failure, but again, I don't really know what the metrics are. So maybe by some standard at Sony, maybe it's a massive failure. Maybe it's treading water. Maybe it's going to shut down in 6 months. Like, I really, anything could happen with that game, and I would believe it, because it's just hard to know. It's they've had departures, they've had layoffs. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that is built up around that game. It's unfortunate. I think that game, I think Marathon is incredible, and I think that it deserves to have a good long life and a good chunk of healthy updates, but that's just not how the world works anymore. And so I don't know, but I would love to see 5 more, 10 more seasons of Marathon, you know. I would love to see them continue to iterate on some of these concepts, and I would love to see them design new areas, you know, like bring that aesthetic to more places, because it is such a fucking fun game to just fucking look at. It is such a fun universe to be in, like lore wise and everything, that I would love to see them continue to do more. But I do not know if that game will get that chance. It seems unlikely that they will get to have a decade long run of, you know, of Marathon updates. But again, I don't know where the priorities lie for pretty much anyone involved. Tim writes in and says, I just saw that Verizon was offering 5 gigabit Fios internet in my area. I absolutely don't need this. And I know I won't see those speeds in the real world, but man, it feels a bit ridiculous and tempting considering I only just got 1 gigabit about 4 years ago. What else can I do with fast internet besides looking and verifying that the benchmarks are hitting their targets on my wired PCs? Do I really want to start investing in home networking equipment, motherboards, wires in the walls, etc.? If you move all your stuff to your garage, you can just tape all the wires down to your garage floor, and that works out pretty well. The only real world thing I see going over 1 or even 2 gigabits with any regularity as someone who has 5 gigabit internet is Steam. And not all the time, but a lot of the time, Steam downloads to one of these wired machines are fucking scary. It's at a point where the bottleneck is actually the fucking SSD in some cases. And so, like, it's pretty fucking awesome. The other thing is, yeah, the home networking equipment situation is a pain in the ass. I actually just replaced the network card on my server last night because it started failing. I don't know why, but it would just fail in the middle of the night for no discernible reason. And you have to put 10 gig cards into it because I don't think they make 5s. You know, your motherboards and all that other stuff, you're going to get a 1. You're going to see a lot of 2.5s these days. But I have not seen any 5s. And so I had to go straight to 10. And so that means getting a 10 gigabit router, of which there are not many. I have a TP link that I like now that, you know, get it while you can if you're in the US, because I think they're on the fucking banned list. Fucking Christ. I tried a Netgear router that also had 10 gig ports on it, and hated it because the software on the back end of it is the shits, and it does not have as many options as I want out of this sort of stuff. But yes, the cool thing is that if you just get 10 gig stuff internally, you can copy things around your network super fucking fast. So that's pretty awesome. Even if your internet's not fast, you can still kind of throw things around your network at ridiculous rates of speed, which is cool as hell. But as far as like the speed of the internet goes, if you're not uploaded, for me, it's like file upload speeds, which are fucking impressive. Like, as someone who was having, you know, with when I had 40 megabits up and I was trying to conduct business here out of the home, and uploading videos became a massive fucking multi-hour pain in the ass. Now, like, after I finish this podcast, I just start the video uploading to YouTube, and it's done uploading before I've thought of a name for the episode. You know, like, and that's like I think it's like a 16 gig file usually. Usually these 3-hour live streams convert to somewhere around 16 gigs of video in 265. Probably smaller if I did AV1, but YouTube was choking on AV1 uploads for a while there, so I stopped I stopped encoding it that way. I should change it again and see if they've fixed it. Anyway, as I said, the upload stuff is really nice. So if you're doing a lot of uploading, having that level of upstream is fucking rad. For me, it's not quite vital, but it's fucking great. And the downstream stuff, Steam is really the only thing I've seen go super, super scary fucking fast. And that's been nice. That's why I say don't preload games from Steam. Because it takes longer to unlock than it does to download. But yeah, you could go build your own router if you wanted to do some kind of, open WRT type of scenario. But I don't know how many of those are... I don't know how many of those are ready, or how much it would cost, what it would take to build something with 10 gig ports on it at that point. So yeah, I don't know what the options are there. But it would be fun to build a router. I keep thinking that would be like a cool thing to do, but then my needs are specific, and I'm sure that is not a cheap, fun project like it maybe used to be, especially when you have those kind of specific needs. But hey. Jared writes in from Alberta, Canada, asking about DJ Hero. I recently had the itch to play DJ Hero again, and after going through those games this past weekend, I was reminded of how cool they are. Then I started thinking, with physical games slowly being phased out, do you think weird game peripherals have any true life or chance to exist in an all-digital gaming world? Would they sell the game on storefronts and then tell you to order the device to play the game? Is it just like a code in the box, or is it just how do they do that? Is it just a weird idea and medium saved exclusively for VR these days? Yeah. I think they would do if they were to do this, which we're not going to see much of that, I don't think. You would include a code for the game with the peripherals, or you would sell it right next to it, because ultimately there will be scenarios where people are buying replacement peripherals because theirs went bad and they don't want to buy another copy of the game because they already have it. And so you wouldn't want to have different SKUs on the shelf that do or don't come with the game. And so, you would probably create a scenario where you're just selling the peripherals. You would not sell those games digitally on the storefront normally, because unless they can be played without the controller. And so I think that is probably the way forward for any of this stuff in a very highly theoretical way, because ultimately I don't think we're going to see a ton of this either way. But I think that rhythm games or games that needed a peripheral would be made in such a way that they can be played without said peripheral. And then they just recommend you go buy one. So it's like, you can still play it with a controller. I mean, don't, but you can. Otherwise, they wouldn't sell it to you digitally on the store. They would only sell it via codes. If it's something that has to be, like, you need a peripheral to play this game, they're not going to create a scenario where you download the game on your console and then go, oh, shit. Fuck, I can't play this at all. Or they end up in a situation where the shell for the game is a free download, and when you buy the peripheral, you're also buying songs, or like whatever. And so they handle the licensing that way. There's a few different ways around it, or a few different ways to address it, I guess I should say. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see a lot of this. There is a guitar game that is still like coming out, stage tour. And it's listed on Steam, but like Red Octane, there is a company called Red Octane again, and they are making a guitar game. And the idea that they have a page on Steam, I think, tells you, what you need to know, and that's probably, you could probably play it with a keyboard if you really wanted to, but you should probably buy a guitar. They're selling guitars now for Fortnite. Like a peripheral manufacturer is making guitar controllers again, and they're meant to be used specifically with Fortnite because Fortnite has a little bit of that harmonics magic sprinkled onto some small portion of it. And so you can theoretically use a guitar controller there. And of course there's Clone Hero and all the other weird things you could do with a guitar controller. But that's a separate that's a whole separate thing, I suppose. Let's see here. Tom from Sydney wrote in, said, in the Venn diagram overlap of my interests, I have only just discovered that Timothy Leary was once involved in the production of video games, such as Timothy Leary's Mind Mirror. Do you have any memories of this particular interlude in the scene? So Mind Mirror came out in like the mid 80s, right? Yes, Timothy Leary's Mind Mirror was released in 1985, with some versions trailing to 86, and it's like a, you know, it is oh gosh, what is Mind Mirror? It's like a personality test. I don't know. It's like and then once you kind of build the personalities a little bit, there's some kind of interactive game-like role-playing scenario type stuff you can do. Timothy Leary, if you're not familiar, is he's the guy who did a lot of LSD. I don't know. I'm sure he did other stuff, but he's like a psychologist, and he became more famous because he advocated strongly for LSD. That's not necessarily a factor in Mind Mirror, I don't think, but no, I was 10 years old when all of that happened, so when Mind Mirror came out, so I don't really remember. There was supposed to be a sequel to that game that never materialized, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of all there is to it as far as I know. But it was funny when this question came in, I immediately assumed that, like, oh, if Timothy Leary was making video games, it must have been in the early 90s, because that is when you would make all your fucking techno hippie interactive CD-ROM fucking horse shit. And so I figured, well, clearly this is when Timothy Leary got involved, because these fucking dumbasses started making all this bullshit. But no, it was way earlier than that. There was some attempt actually in that multimedia era pocket, I think, to maybe either do Mind Mirror again or something like it. But I guess it never materialized. And so, yeah, I don't really have any specific memories of that. I've heard of Mind Mirror before, but I don't think I've ever actually even seen it. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I should take a look at it. Let's drop acid and play Timothy Leary's Mind Mirror on stream. What do you say? No. What else is going on? Let me find some more emails here. Terry in Canada writes in and says, as someone born in 92, I never got to experience the golden age of arcades. However, having gotten to experience Japanese arcades, I do wonder, is there an actual good reason for arcades to have died? I get that arcades were mostly a thing to showcase graphical power that most people couldn't afford at home, and that modern home hardware makes the graphical wow factor no longer relevant. However, part of me can't help but feel that arcades dying are a communal loss that's driven by an unhealthy convenience culture. I still think of how lively that Namco arcade near my Airbnb in Japan was. It seemed like a genuine third place where people hung out and socialized. It's a shame that things like VR never revitalized arcades. Was it inevitable with the progress of technology? Could I just be romanticizing an era and a time that I didn't live through? It's a bit of both. It's a big mix, right? It's Japan is very different culturally than the United States and certainly Canada. And so arcades there did, do a little bit better. And I think it's because people are much more densely packed into spaces, and there's just a little bit more. And a lot of those arcades are now going away over there as well. But there was kind of like a, hey, on your way home from work, from the train station to your next stop, there's a little spot here you can stop in and do a little something. Also, the internet in Japan was not really a thing until much later than it was in other parts of the world. And so that kind of cultural transition was very different there as well. But the reason arcades died, and died is a weird way to put it. I mean, I just went to an arcade. But the reason that arcade games hit that wall in the 90s is because, not necessarily because of PC hardware, but because consoles got better. And it's similar to some of the arguments that I think movie theater owners make about, streaming movies and whatever. We reached a point and where most of the arcade machines that were very popular were fighting games in the 90s. The fighting game boom of the 90s was massive, and it was a huge deal from Street Fighter 2 onward into later in the 90s when we got to Tekken and Virtua Fighter and stuff like that. Those cabinets became very expensive. And so you have a situation where you're paying a lot of money to get a Tekken 2 cabinet. Now, envision that a version of Tekken 2 comes out at home that is at least as good as, if not better than, the version in arcades. Suddenly, you don't need to go to an arcade to play Tekken anymore. This is the specific anecdote that an arcade guy told me, was just like, this is fucked, was because now all of his Tekken cabinets were doing no business because everyone was just playing at home. And they didn't need to go to an arcade to play Tekken. And obviously Tekken 3 would come along, but that's a whole nother expense for the arcade owner who has to buy, at minimum, boards and what have you, at maximum, a whole new cabinet. For a game that he will then get burned on again in less than a year's time. And so from an investment perspective, a lot of those machines became very frustrating because they became more expensive because of all the fancy hardware inside of them. And now all of a sudden you have these home machines that are playing these games faster and faster and faster and better and better and better. It's not the case where like, oh, the home version is actually kind of fucked up, and so you do still need to go to arcades. Like, the home version of Mortal Kombat 2 was good enough that you could stop going. Mortal Kombat 3 less so. The home versions of MK3 were kind of ass because we were in this weird transition period between consoles. But that is the big problem. And so that sent arcades down this fucking road of like, what can we make that people can't do at home? And so, you had a lot of these manufacturers move away from arcade-based fighting games, or they would still make them, but they knew that eventually they were going to make their money on the home market. And that's why we started getting more and more big driving games. Obviously, rhythm games became a bigger deal in some parts of the world around then because DDR was certainly becoming more of a factor through the 90s, as well as Guitar Freaks and Drum Mania and all of the other kind of Bamani stuff that Konami was making. And so that ended up being kind of the next frontier on that because, those were big cabinets with things you couldn't do at home. And then they started making home DDR mats, and they started, you could get a Guitar Freaks controller. I mean, Guitar Freaks never really came out in the US anyway, but like it was the same type of situation. Fat Scout asks, so why didn't you can just play it at home not hit the Japanese market as much? Well, with the rhythm boom, it was a factor of like their apartments are not as large. Their space for playing games was not big enough to where they could have a fucking guitar and a fucking PlayStation 2 drum kit and all of that shit. So that's sort of a factor. Everyone being in apartments means that Konami had to sell Manor cushions, which were mats you could put under your dance mat to try to absorb some of the noise so you weren't stomping on it and having bad manners for your downstairs neighbors. So that was a whole concept there with a lot of that stuff. I think that, just culturally, because of some of the ways that, like, smartphones and the internet and what have you, like, just it didn't take hold in Japan quite at the same rate that it happened over here. I think that's certainly a part of it as well. Like, technologically, they were in a weirder place. They made different choices, like their phones were so much more capable than ours were for so long. You could customize your Virtua Fighter 4 character from your fucking phone there. You downloaded an app for your phone. This is pre-iPhone. These are, these phones have buttons on. These are flip phones, man. And you could do all that cool shit. And then, iPhone came out and kind of leveled that playing field to a great degree. Japanese people got off of their weird phone internet and started getting on regular ass internet. Because the PC was not really a huge factor over there as well. I don't know if it is, I think it's better than it was, but most people accessed any form of email or online or any kind of stuff like that through their fucking iMode or, like whatever other phone services they were using over there. And so I think that probably contributed to just things being different there in general in terms of how people socialized and how people connected and what have you. I think that left more of a space for arcades. And a lot of them, probably didn't have room for a lot of this stuff in their home to begin with. And so that probably also contributed. But yeah, from my perspective, talking to arcade owners at the time, because like I was talking to these folks in 96, 97, and he just came up in a conversation the other day. I don't know if he's still running any kind of arcade stuff, but but my mom's known him. He's Petaluma's most famous demolition derby driver also. Anyway, or at least he was. I assume he still is. I don't know why he wouldn't be. Anyway, but it was, like he was putting arcade cabinets into movie theaters and laundromats and all of that sort of stuff, and so he would just see these drop-offs happen in real time and just be like, yeah, like I went and bought a magazine and saw that Tekken 2 is coming out here, or Tekken 3, and what have you. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, fuck this. Like, I'm never buying another fucking Tekken machine ever again. And he was like a big Tekken fan, weirdly enough, but he was like, I'm never fucking getting one of these ever again, at least at full price, because I know that they're just going to release a home version that's going to totally fuck me. And I think that's, to me, that was always like a major part of that downfall. The American arcade market had become so fixated on fighting games, and then all of those fighting games came home. And most of them were very acceptable. I mean, if you had a Saturn, you were getting amazing versions of these games. If you had a PlayStation, you were getting versions of these games with some frames of animation cut out and some shit like that. They were not as good, but they were fine, and they were good enough for most people. So I think that's really the thing that really changed things in the 90s and led us to this market that we have now. Like, you see, when did Raw Thrills make like that? Because they had made an American Idol game, I think. But when did Target Terror come out? I guess I'm trying to think, when did Raw Thrills? I guess that's later. That's much later. Raw Thrills is more like mid 2000s. 2004. Okay, so that's a chunk of time, but like that's where we got to. Like, I remember Target Terror might have actually been, if not the first, it was one of the first games that Raw Thrills did. And that was a company started up out of Chicago with Eugene Jarvis and some folks that had been around for a lot of the original arcade stuff. And they saw a market where they could make that stuff again because pizza places still existed and all that. They just saw a gap where the content didn't exist anymore. There were not any American arcade game manufacturers around anymore, really. And so, and the Japanese market had become further fixated on rhythm cabinets and all of this other stuff. And so there was this territory of like, okay, we can go get these licenses. Like, suddenly we saw arcade Madden games, like Madden Arcade, and, it's just PC in a box type stuff, like the Fast and the Furious driving games that they did, and the super bikes and all the other shit that Raw Thrills put out along that time, Lycon games like a Target Terror, which came to arcades before it eventually came to the Wii, I believe. And so they found a way to kind of build a new market for arcade games. And they've built a lot of games that never come home. And that's where we're at now. Or the other kind of weirder situation we're in now, where games start somewhere else, and then we end up seeing arcade versions of like Doodle Jump or like Injustice, the NetherRealm fighting game. Like there is a version of the mobile Injustice game in arcades that spits out trading cards when you win, or just when you play it. I think you get a card, or maybe you get two cards if you win, one if you lose, whatever it is. But like there are games like that there where they've adapted mobile games. You have an arcade Mario Kart now that's old by today's standards, but you have this giant, insane fucking Tomb Raider cabinet that I just saw, It's weird. The idea of Tomb Raider in an arcade seems like the most impossible. Like, I just sat there and fucking stared at it, like dumbfounded, like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, it felt like I had stepped into some fucking alternate dimension. The idea that like someone had gone and licensed, like, it's got Crystal Dynamics logos on it, like they're using existing assets from those other games, and then pulling it into a different experience and making it into a fucking light gun game of all things. It's fucking crazy, dude. Like, that's fucking bananas. And so the path that games, take to arcades now is really fucking strange. Really fucking strange. Like, the big Castlevania Redemption cabinet. It's just like fucking bananas, man. And it's a totally different industry now. That's maybe the weirdest part about it, is like, when GameSpot first started, when we first started Video GameSpot in 96, or I guess that's when GameSpot PC launched in 96 as well. But, I specifically came in for the console launch. Like, there were still arcade games to cover. Like, me and Ryan McDonald went to the Mortal Kombat 4 truck tour to see that game before it came out. Capcom invited us to Sunnyvale Golfland to see Marvel vs. Capcom 2 when it was there on like location test or something. We were covering arcade games, not frequently, but just often enough that there was like still like stuff going on. There were still new Mortal Kombat games coming to arcades. There were still, like Street Fighter 3, like we were writing about games when Street Fighter 3 came out. And so publications were still trying to cover arcade games because they were still relevant, because you were seeing games that would eventually come home. And so there, even if nothing else, you were like, okay, well, in a year's time, we'll be talking about a PlayStation or Dreamcast, whatever, some home version of this game. And so that was relevant. But like, arcades are just a fucking black box now, and no one's covering that shit. No one in the traditional gaming space, anyway. I'm sure that there are people out there putting up YouTube videos of like, hey, look at this arcade cabinet or whatever, right? But it's not something that makes the same impact around kind of enthusiast gaming publications that it used to 30 years ago, and so it's just kind of fucking crazy that like arcades have become this total fucking separate weird thing that's happening over here, and you're like, I don't even know, like they're just, and they're all just PCs now, it's not like big custom bespoke boards and all the, like it's just like, here's a computer in a fucking box. Please don't pirate these games, because they're all just running on Windows or Linux or some fucking insane. Let's see. Phil from Houston writes in looking for some advice about OLED monitors. Says, you've mentioned that you have a 2K LG OLED monitor. I have a my OLED is an Alienware currently. I like it a lot. Anyway, I'm considering upgrading from an IPS panel, but I'm concerned about text clarity and VRR flicker. Can you talk about your experiences with both? This Alienware monitor I've had for a while now. The text clarity has been fine. I haven't had any issues with kind of the clarity of the monitor. It's a really nice, like, was it like a 27-inch 1440p monitor? The OLED is nice. It gets very dark when it needs to, the way you would want out of an OLED monitor. VRR flicker it's very noticeable on this monitor, and VRR flicker is not something that you only see on an OLED monitor. But I will say on this Alienware monitor, like I'll be running windowed like emulators and stuff, and I've got them running in VRR because arcade machines sometimes ran at weirdo refresh rates and all of that sort of shit, and so there are reasons to do that. And like the flicker will sometimes be very noticeable in most PC games. I find that I only really see the VRR flicker when a game is loading, because that's, in some cases, that's when the frame rate's all over the place. It's running at full frame rate and then it drops to 2 frames per second because it's compiling shaders and it's doing this and that. But you will see some you will see some scenarios where the flicker is very noticeable, but I have not had it be very noticeable when playing games. And some of that depends on what GPU you have driving it and what frame rates you're getting, and like there's going to be situations like that will impact that one way or the other. But I have not really noticed it in game. It's really been like, oh, during this cutscene it did this, or during this loading screen it did this, or what have you. But like I have not been super worried about burn-in on it. It's been really good about that. It turns off every so often to refresh stuff. And modern OLEDs, I think, are generally pretty good when it comes to dealing with burn-in or preventing burn-in before it happens. Like that stuff's gotten a lot better than it was when some of this stuff first started rolling out, because this is also my primary desktop, and so there's fucking icons on this desktop, and sometimes I look at them and go like, that one's been there for 3 days. I should probably move it to it inspires me to try to keep my desktop clear of icons, but it means that on one of my side monitors I just have like all my desktop shit just sits over there. So I'm not clean. I'm not living that clean lifestyle the way I want to be. I really want to try, but cannot justify the expense. Some of these, like it's the G-Sync, I forget what it's even called now. Pulsar, the G-Sync Pulsar stuff, because that is doing like, what is it? I don't even know how to describe G-Sync Pulsar. It's like a crazy backlight, whatever. Like it is something for motion smoothness, and it sounds really fast. It sounds like an even more fascinating way to play old games, like old emulator stuff that is running at really wild, 5997 and like the crazy refresh rates that some of those arcade monitors expected back in the day. It sounds like it's really fucking awesome, but those are all like LCDs, like they aren't OLEDs, and so I don't want to replace this OLED because I really like this monitor, and I don't necessarily want to get a G-Sync Pulsar and make it like a secondary monitor that just has Discord on it most of the time either. And so it just seems like a bad a bad purchase at given where I'm currently at display wise. But it sounds like super fucking fascinating tech that I only really care about in terms of fucking emulating old games. But it's something that they're approaching CRT like levels of like motion quality, motion clarity, I guess I should say. And that sounds neat as hell, but it's pricey. When they first got announced, there was one that was in stock, and I was like, oh, I should get there. I sat there for like 20 minutes, and then by the time I went back to look at it, it had sold out. I was like, okay, good. You've saved me from myself. Thank you. And I haven't really thought about it until right now. And now, thanks. I'm thinking about it again. God damn it. All right. Well, we'll see how that goes. Anonymous from Vancouver writes in. It says, your discussion about SSX the other week. It's funny that you mentioned Skate. Because if that had hit like it was supposed to, the plan was to basically make a new SSX inside of it, travel to a different zone to do snowboard stuff, and so on. Might have been cool, but probably not. Vancouver, you say? Mm-hmm. That's a fucking bummer. That's, wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Like shit. Yeah. Yep. That would have been maybe neat. I don't know. I'm trying to think would that engine do SSX justice? You could probably get most. Yeah, you could probably get most of the way there. Hayden writes in with some PlayStation 6 questions. Do you think Sony might phase out separate generation game SKUs for PlayStation 6 and move to a single software release that scales dynamically to whichever device it's installed on, similar to PC? For starters, I don't think we get to use the term SKU anymore, right? I mean, SKU is specifically for physical goods. Like, I think we might be breaking, like, we're finally going to break free of the term SKU. There's no stock to keep when all the units are digital. So we won't see any SKUs for the PS6, I suppose. Anyway, with high hardware costs and rumors of a handheld running near PS5 specs, blurring the line between generations makes a lot of sense. Developers wouldn't have to manage multiple native builds, and players wouldn't have to worry about cross-gen versions. Migrating saves from PS4 to PS5 games was painful and weird. Is there a realistic path for this, or do you think we'll still see separate versions like we did with PS4 and PS5? So I do think that Sony will, like, given time, right? Like, given time over the course of this generation and seeing how the PS4 to PS5 transition ultimately went and comparing that to what Microsoft has done, I would, if I were internal at Sony working on, like, hey, what are some things we want to simplify about the experience for PlayStation 6? I would, at bare minimum, be looking at the smart delivery stuff that Xbox does and going, we have to do that. Like, we have to fucking do that. The things they did, like, they were running into trouble early in this generation where players were accidentally downloading the PS4 version of a cross-gen bundle. And so they had to rework the download experience to be clearer about download PS5 version. Because that stuff was not as clear as it needed to be when they were first starting out. And so I look at that and say they should absolutely be smarter about how they deliver games to players. And I think that, like, if there was a, there's a small handful of tech things like that on the Xbox side of things that I think are worth stealing, and smart delivery is absolutely one of them. I think the way that they've done that in this generation on Xbox has been very smooth. The saves are seamless. You don't have to dick around with it. There were PS4 games, I think like Tony Hawk 1 and 2 was like this, where you had to launch the PS4 version just to upload your save one last time before you could go download it. Like it was like a bunch of weird custom solutions that developers had to implement early on, and like that stuff just is crappy. So I would expect them to be smarter and smoother about how they handle those sorts of transitions this time around, simply because they've had 6+ years now to think about it. And I think that stuff is like relatively easy in the grand scheme of things. It's not like, hey, can we find a way to, stab a guy and get a deal on some RAM? Like that's a lot harder than simplifying the way software gets downloaded. As far as like cross-gen stuff and how I think the next iteration on this is going to go, I think the PlayStation 5 is going to continue to be relevant for years to come. Certainly the PS5 Pro. And I don't know if that means that we will see software that is, exclusive to PS6 or like what the messaging ends up being. If we assume that this detail about the idea of there being multiple PlayStation 6 devices, right? If we assume that that is the case and that it is still the case and all of this other stuff, then the PS5 Pro sits right in the middle of that stack. And that means there's zero reason for it to go away unless something about the architecture of the PS6 is so dramatically different that becomes a pain in the ass. And so if we're in a situation where we've got a PlayStation 6 console and theoretically eventually a PlayStation 6 Pro, Jesus Christ, how expensive will that be? But if we live in a world where there's a PS6 console, a PlayStation 5 Pro, and then some kind of PlayStation 6 era handheld device, right? And what they call that, I think calling that a PS6 would maybe be muddy if they do intend to keep the PS5 around a lot longer, right? I think there's zero reason to truly sunset the PS5. Again, unless it is an undue burden on developers or there's like some other reason that we're just not aware of because we're not making games for these devices. Unless something changes so dramatically that making PS5 games and PS6 games at the same time is like a dramatic pain in the ass, I don't see a reason why the PS5 would ever go away. And so, or business reasons, like, hey, we want to sunset the PS5 Pro because we want you to buy a PS6. Which is that's valid, I suppose, in some sick way. And so I think that we end up with PlayStation 5 sticking around for years to come. I don't know. I assume that first party will end up making PS5 and PS6 games for a very long time. I don't think that they are planning. My understanding, I guess I should say, of the situation over there is that they are not currently thinking about the end of the PS5. Doesn't mean they're going to sell them in the quantities that they are now. Doesn't mean that you'll be able to find PS5s in stores forever or whatever. But that it's very likely that they will continue to make games for that device well into the lifespan of the PS6. That's more or less what they did this time around. A lot of third parties especially did that. But yeah, in a world where developers will be asked to make games that run on multiple power settings, or like you see the power saver stuff they worked into the PlayStation 5 OS stuff already, and like you look at some of that and go like, okay, is this something that are you prepping? Are these profiles that are a little bit closer to the specs of whatever your handheld is, or like what are we actually doing? Or you can start to speculate at least around some of that stuff. But I guess I don't see a reason why the PS5 would ever go away at all through this generation. If they have a handheld that is right there with it. And if you look at the rest of the market and how expensive everything is and all this other stuff, they're going to want to be able to get their games in front of as many people as possible. And so cutting off PlayStation 5 owners early or at all ends up hurting their install base to some extent. And as games get more and more expensive to make, they don't want that number to go down. Even from day one, they would love to be able to sell all these games to existing PS5 owners and be able to say, like, hey, man, your PS5's getting a little old, and yeah, these games still run. It's great. Yeah. But you could get a PlayStation 6. They want to be able to provide an upgrade path as well. Especially in a world where they're going all digital and, it's all one ecosystem and all of that. I don't think there's a real reason to get rid of a PS5 Pro at this point, especially considering how fucking expensive they are. So yeah, I don't envision a scenario where they roll out this PlayStation 6 stuff and immediately turn their back on the existing platform. From a business sense, from a technological sense, I just don't see any reason why that would be something they would have to do. Or something that they would really want to do. I think the reasons for them to want to do it are things that they wouldn't need to address for years. And that's like, oh, we've sold enough PlayStation 6, we've sold enough modern PlayStations that we can afford to kind of move further in this direction and maybe not make these games for PS5 anymore. But again, if you're also selling a handheld that is practically a PlayStation 5, then yeah, maybe it never goes away. Maybe this is the first dual generation. Maybe we get away from numbers at this point. Maybe they, with the writing on the wall being what it is, as far as things being fucking crazy expensive and just the tech is not advancing maybe in the ways that it used to in the past. And so, we're already getting somewhat diminishing returns out of these boxes to begin with and like all of that. You can start to envision a scenario where they're just like, yeah, this is the new PlayStation. You could also get the less new PlayStation if you want, or the handheld PlayStation. They all play the same games. We'll see, but I do think that there's an opportunity for them to do that and to, whether they take the number off it or not, or what they end up calling any of this stuff. This is a chance for them. If they want it, I mean, they don't have to, but there's an opportunity here, I think, with the way things seem to be heading, that they could take numbers off of this stuff and, kind of move in that direction to where they don't call it a PlayStation 6 Pro. It's just the PlayStation 2030. It's the, whatever, they could move to a totally different model right here, right now, I think, if they wanted to. I just don't know if that makes like actual perfect sense for them. I think that, like there's almost certainly stuff that I'm not thinking of. There always is. Yeah, I don't know. It's an opportunity. I'm not sure if it's a positive opportunity, but it is something that feels like it is in line with where they're headed. Whether you like it or not. Steven writes in and says, the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 3 had major updates to their controllers partway through their lifespan, with the DualShock replacing the D-pad and the DualShock 3 replacing the 6-axis. The even-numbered consoles did not get a controller revision. Is it time for the current odd-numbered PlayStation to drop a new controller? No. No, I don't think that, like, most developers don't take full advantage of the PlayStation 5 controller features right now. And so I don't really think that, that they could have a revision of that controller with a battery in it that wasn't dog shit. That'd be a cool direction for them to go in. Now with juice. The Gears of War edition. Look at all this juice. Oh, wait, I guess we can't. See, missed opportunity, man. Gears not coming to PlayStation. I think the controller opportunity is firmly on the Xbox side of the fence right now, and I think that they need to catch up with whatever they're doing next. I think they need to meet PlayStation feature for feature on the controller front for the good of developers. Unity for the good of developers. Not Unity the engine, actual legitimate Unity. Unity, like that, like the capital U Unity. And so bringing gyros to the Xbox controller, bringing haptic triggers to the Xbox controller, like those are the sorts of things that I think we need to see. Standardizing back buttons across controllers might be nice as well. I think it would be cool if, next time around, if PlayStation was going to make some meaningful changes, I would love to see them get rid of that dumb fucking touchpad. Put some fucking buttons on that thing. Come on. Grow up. No one uses the touchpad. And most of the developers that do use it for buttons. Put a select button on the controller. Stop it. Stop it. No, that would probably be the only thing I would really change. Obviously both of them have their high-end controllers. Like if you want to spend $200 on a controller, you can get one that has back buttons on it now. But those aren't like big major, those aren't changes that impact developers, right? That's just like, here's a fancier controller. You can have an X button on the back of it if you want. We don't fucking care. And they did that add-on paddle thing for the PS4 controller, same type deal. But as far as like things that developers would have to account for, I think it's haptics in the trigger. I'm just a big fan of it. It's not good for multiplayer games because you want to pull that trigger as fast as you can. You don't want to, have realistic feeling guns in your competitive multiplayer game. That's a pain in the ass. But I think when those triggers are used well in driving games, when you're shooting and, a variety of different things, I think they're really neat. I think you could always refine the rumble even further. I don't know, like if you wanted to do, some more dramatic rumble in a controller, I guess you could get away with that. There's stuff you could do for sure. But for me, it's like, it really is haptics. I think, on the Xbox side, you might as well do gyro because I think that there are probably enough players that want it. I don't, but I think, the time has probably come to standardize stuff like that in a lot of cases as well. And some of it is just nuts and bolts shit that is, again, not stuff that developers would have to account for, but like we should, for the amount of money people are already paying for this stuff, like put TMR sticks in these things, man. Do something. Like, let's stop having these like lowest common denominator fucking broken, drifting, fucking fucked up controllers. Like, stop it. Stop it. The consoles are fucking thousands of dollars now. Like, we're already fucking in, man. We're already in for getting fucked over. Just fucking raise the price another $5 or $10 and put fucking good sticks on these fucking things. Come on. It's ridiculous, dude. Like, these are luxury items with busted ass fucking shit ass joysticks. The players deserve better in so many different ways. But that is the one where I'm putting my foot down. Yeah, man. That's that shit is ridiculous. S-Drag-X2 says, I have N64 controls from 30 years ago that still work. Yeah, man, I have two N64. I mean, I'm using an N64 controller from the 90s every week. Works fine. It's fucking brand new, basically. I have a couple. I have like 3 or 4 N64 controllers that are basically perfect. That's what happens when you buy an N64 and you're not fucking 8 years old. Is you can keep your things nice. This stick is fucking fine. This is not like a launch N64 controller, but this fucking thing works perfectly. Let's see if we can find maybe one more question here. Alex from Lowell, Mass. Home of so much professional wrestling history. Writes in and says, today I saw that Shin Megami Tensei 2 on the PlayStation 1 got a fan translation into English, and I was wicked stoked to try it out. So you can tell he's from but I was a bit soured by the fact that it was created using an LLM. Recently, I've noticed this trend creeping into a few of my usual online spaces, and you even mentioned that the Mr. community is facing this as well. But the more I think about these LLM translation patches, the more I start to think this isn't quite as cut and dry as other AI uses are. Mainly, these are projects that often go unpaid and give us access to games that wouldn't otherwise be accessible to non-English speakers. I try my best to avoid any AI bullshit, but translation patches are something that I could see myself possibly trying out. For now, though, I choose to avoid them. I would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. I think the unfortunate thing about work like that is that it prevents people from doing the work for real. I think when you have these AI translation things coming out that are sometimes of dubious quality, it ends up like checking a box in some sick way where it's like, oh, I guess someone did a shitty version of that, and now I'm not going to go do it because there's already this fucking dog shit version out here that fucking sucks. Which is pretty much what happened with Sega Gaga, I think, in a lot of ways, is like one of those dropped and it was AI translation that was kind of shitty. Machine translation with LLMs is, I haven't checked some of this stuff recently, but like some of this stuff is about as bad as it always has been. Machine translation is not new. It has existed for a good long time. And a lot of that stuff is just funky. The Mr. stuff is like getting worse all the time. Like, it's sad because I think it is also going to scare people away from doing it for real, where you've got like an AI generated core that runs Mortal Kombat 3 and a lot of those other era of games, NBA Hang Time and some of that stuff, but like they were AI generated and also they kind of fucking suck. Like I looked at them for a little bit and it's like, oh, the audio is all fucked up and like and it doesn't seem like a situation where a human can go in and fix it, because why would they? Why would they help out this person who's fucking generating all these fucking garbage cores? But also, like, is someone going to do the work from scratch now and do it the right way? I don't know. Like, it ends up putting a fucking cloud over these projects in ways that are, like, super negative. And stifling, I think, for people that are interested in doing the work for realsies. And I think that is the real problem. And I think that's a problem with fan translations. That's a problem with some of these Mr. Cores and all of this other stuff. Like, people have been trying to plug away on this Midway stuff for a long time, and it sounds like it's been quite difficult. But like, in the case of the Mr., like, it doesn't, like, having inaccurate versions of these or having cores that are just MAME code repurposed, like, who cares? I can run MAME on a billion other devices. Like, the Mr. is purpose built to be better than that. And so, saddling it with these fucking dog shit cores, not great. Not great, man. And so LLM fan translation, I think, is really fucking unfortunate. Because again, I think that there are opportunities to do this right. And there are people that do this for the love of it, that are dissuaded from doing so for specific games because, like, hey, someone already farted out some shitty version of this, and like, all right, whatever. I'm gonna go work on something else, and I think that is unfortunate, to say the least. And that's gonna do it. Thanks, everybody, for coming along and listening to the show. Of course, head over to YouTube and you can check out the latest ranked N64 games. Last week was a banner week with GoldenEye 007 making its way to the list, along with what was Big Mountain 2000 last week also. Man, it's all a blur. It was GoldenEye and Paperboy and Gauntlet. Big Mountain 2000 was the week before. Gauntlet Legends is a really fucking interesting game. Like all these years later, like as someone who played a bunch of the arcade version of that, like there's something about the home versions there that are like, this is kind of interesting. That made me want to play more of it in some sick way. Head over to Jeff.Zone for information on how to get an ad-free version of this podcast and, of course, additional content. New Hall of Fame should be headed your way in the relatively near future. I recorded that. I just got to cut it together and get it out the door. And so that'll be coming along soon. And, of course, on Friday, we'll rank another batch of N64 games. Maybe tomorrow we'll play some of this Marvel. It's Marvel, baby. I think that's what you say when you're excited about a Marvel fighting game. Do you think they will put a Mango Sentinel into Marvel Tokon? Scoops, Häagen-Dazs, and so on. We'll find out. Where is your curly mustache? I'll see you next week with another edition of this fine podcast. Have yourself a great rest of your week, and I'll be back tomorrow and Friday and all that other good stuff. And again, go follow the channel thing on YouTube and check out some ranked N64 games. It's been fucking crazy. It's been really fucking crazy playing all these N64 games. Someone commented on the because I did Star Fox 64, and someone commented that this guy's dog shit at Star Fox 64. I was like, yeah, maybe, dude. I don't know. I haven't played that game since the fucking 90s. Like, sorry. I'm not a fucking Star Fox speedrunner. Like, what the fuck? Oh my God. Ridiculous. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll do some more shit. Have a good one.